As I walked down the apartment hallway, tired from work, suddenly someone from the neighboring apartment grabbed my arm. Confused and scared, I screamed as I was dragged inside. It was my neighbor, Mr. Johnson, who apologized, claiming he had no choice. Suspicious, I pulled away, demanding an explanation. He nervously said, "Actually, my name is Luna. Now, let me tell you about my life. I'm 24, working in a well-known trading company. I enjoy the freedom of living alone in a city apartment, earning my own money. I grew up with a single mom who struggled to provide, but she never gave me an allowance. Despite her reasonable income, she was labeled a toxic parent. I moved out to escape her control, and I'll share our story. I was born and raised in a town near New York City. My childhood home was remote, making life difficult without a car or bus. Raised by my single mom, I should be grateful, but her restrictions created resentment. In elementary school, I asked for an allowance, but she refused, claiming money could lead to trouble. Despite promises, she never bought what I wanted. Birthdays were filled with disappointing educational books, and I realized my mom was different from my friends' parents. Every day, I desperately tried to find a way to escape my parents' control. Through middle and high school, it only intensified. Not only did I not get an allowance, but I also had to report and get permission for everything, whether it was hanging out with friends or going on dates. Once, after sneaking out to meet my boyfriend, I faced my mother's furious reaction the next morning. She declared that I would go without meals for the next 3 days. Without an allowance, I couldn't even buy food outside. Too embarrassed to let my friends or boyfriend know about my toxic mom, I couldn't ask them for something as simple as a snack. After 3 days of hunger, my concerned boyfriend approached me, asking if I was okay. Unable to hold back my tears, I'd opened up about my mother. I still remember the shock on his face. Although he sympathized at first, he began avoiding me afterward. 2 weeks later, I overheard him telling his friends that my mom seemed like a real problem, and he didn't want to deal with it. He thought I was desperate and kind of scary. Hearing him talk like that made me realize he felt bothered by my toxic mom, not wanting to protect me but feeling alienated. Overwhelmed with frustration and tears, I quietly slipped away to a corner of the hallway, realizing it was over with him still having feelings for him. I had to abruptly end my love for him, filled with anger towards my mom. When I got home, I lashed out at her, questioning why she had to control me. I blamed her for my boyfriend leaving, and my friends distancing themselves because of her abnormal behavior. Frustrated, I vented at her, only to find her pleased that my relationship had ended. Her self-indulgent response deepened my despair. My mother couldn't understand my feelings, and her sense of righteousness ignored common sense. Controlling my life was her reason for living. Feeling dizzy and unable to contain myself, I rushed to my room. Closing the door, I cried, wishing for a lock that my mother, who enjoyed controlling me, would never allow. My mother's concerned voice interrupted, asking if I was eating dinner. Her words weighed heavy on my chest. After high school, determined to live alone, I vowed to become a college student. I channeled my frustration into studying for exams as revenge. I secretly started a part-time job, faking my mother's signature. Gradually, I earned scholarships and slipped into the acceptance range of a New York public university. When I finally told my mother about my achievements, she smiled sweetly, praising my hard work. However, her reference to M University, a nearby public university, signaled that I wouldn't be allowed to live on my own. It was just a 20-minute commute from home. Despite choosing a university within New York, my mother insisted on a different one in a neighboring town. This left me feeling uneasy, as she continued trying to control me even as I was about to become a college student. Rejecting the idea of M University, I expressed my desire for our chosen university. In response, my mother sternly dismissed it, insisting on M University and questioning my chances of getting in. Frustrated and unable to hold back tears, I turned away from my mother and rushed to my room. Even as a college student, I couldn't escape her control. Balancing exams and part-time work was tough. And despite my efforts, it all seemed unnecessary. The frustration affected my sleep, leading me to take the entrance exam for M University, getting in as expected. Before I knew it, I was a college student, and my mother surprised me with a smartphone as a celebration gift. It was a remarkable shift from her previous controlling behavior. With the smartphone, I felt liberated, like a fish in water, thoroughly enjoying college life. Making new friends and engaging in normal communication, I also focused on my future, participating in student organizations and volunteer activities. Rather than joining clubs or sports teams, I applied what I learned to secure a position at the most famous trading company in the States, located in New York. Finally, as a working adult, I got to live on my own. My mother congratulated me on my job, presenting me with a $2,000 wallet as a gift. Over the past few years, her control over me had considerably loosened. Despite past resentment, I genuinely thanked her for everything as I began living apart from her. In the end, I decided to express my gratitude, and my mother's response was, "It's nothing. Just take care and do your best." Despite her recent change in attitude, I didn't question why she was so willing to let me go. Looking back, I should have been more suspicious, understanding that my mother wouldn't easily let me go. Nevertheless, I ended up living alone in a town near the center of New York City. The rent was high, but my company's housing allowance made my personal expenses around $600 a month. The apartment building wasn't large, and I would recognize the faces of fellow residents. I lived in a corner room on the third floor, and next door lived a man named Johnson. While we exchanged greetings, our interactions were limited. Johnson seemed about 5 years older, with a slender build and a kind appearance. In New York, neighborly interactions are usually indifferent, so beyond a simple hello, I rarely spoke with Johnson. Fortunately, he didn't seem like a strange person. I kept my apartment secret from my mother, as I didn't want her showing up unannounced. When she asked about my address, I simply said, "I'll be back soon," and left it at that. She seemed a bit down but accepted it, saying, "Well, that's fine." Despite being focused on my work computer, my mother frequently called or texted me. During work, I received calls that interrupted my concentration, leading to irritation. The demanding job at the trading company, coupled with my mother's constant calls, made the situation challenging. Not just calls, but she kept sending messages, resulting in a flood of unread notifications. A chill ran down my spine, and a concerned colleague noticed my strained expression. I reassured them, "It's nothing," and managed to maintain composure, continuing my work. 2 years passed in this manner, and at the age of 24, my second-year salary was remarkably high. Earning money independently brought me deep joy. Gradually, I became more engrossed in work, increasingly ignoring calls from my mother. Since she didn't know where I lived, there was no chance of running into her unless I went home. The image of my mother slowly faded from my life, and I finally felt like I was living my own life. One day, after drinks with colleagues, I was tipsier than usual on my way home. Around 10 p.m., as I reached the third floor of my apartment building, I staggered towards my corner room, mumbling about another long day at work. Suddenly, a man's voice called out, "Luna, over here for a sec." I felt someone grab my arm from the next-door apartment entrance. In a moment of confusion, I screamed and was dragged inside. Furious, I shouted, "What on earth are you doing? I'm going to call the cops." My neighbor, Mr. Johnson, apologized, claiming he had no other choice. Suspicious, I shook off his grip and accused him of planning something. In the midst of my panic, Mr. Johnson urged me to calm down. However, his next words made me shudder. "I saw someone break into your apartment." Although I immediately thought it might be a trap, Johnson looked serious. Unfamiliar with such situations, I was more afraid of him than anything and tried to escape. Startled by his intense tone, I hesitated, and he urgently pleaded for me to wait, emphasizing the danger outside. At a crossroads and unsure whether to believe him, I saw desperation in Johnson's eyes. Though we had barely spoken, his eyes seemed direct and sincere. It was just a hunch, but I felt inclined to listen to him. Trembling, I asked about the break-in details, and Johnson began to explain. I couldn't see clearly, but the person wore all black, with long sleeves and pants, looking suspicious. I'd seen someone similar around the apartment complex before, thinking they were just another resident. About 3 hours ago, when I came home, I saw that person entering your apartment, and that's when I thought something was off. It's 10 p.m. now, so around 7 o'clock p.m. Wearing all black clothes in July isn't comfortable. However, the key issue is how someone could enter my house without having a key. Initially, I thought it might be a friend or your boyfriend, Luna, so I didn't pay much attention. However, when I heard you coming home just a while ago, I got shocked. Even if they were a friend or boyfriend, staying alone in someone else's home for 3 hours seemed strange. It hit me that this person could be dangerous, so I decided to stop you. Mr. Johnson's words made me tremble violently. If what he was saying was true, the intruder might still be hiding in my apartment. I haven't given my keys to anyone, don't have a boyfriend, and haven't made plans with any friends, ever since a harsh experience with a boyfriend in high school. I've avoided dating men, so I currently don't have a romantic partner or close friends nearby. Who could be breaking into my home? Luna, please calm down and listen. Have you been stalked by anyone recently? Johnson asked, trying to soothe my agitation. Stalked? No, nothing like that. I had no recollection of such a thing, but it was possible someone was stalking me without my knowledge. Maybe you just haven't noticed, but the perpetrator could have been acting this way for a while. Is there anyone, perhaps a romantic partner, with whom you had a falling out or argument? When Mr. Johnson asked me that, I thought about the men around me. Since a high school incident, I've been afraid to get involved with men, and I hadn't had any such relationships with my work colleagues. No, there's no one. I've been avoiding such things all this time. I couldn't think of anyone who might be the intruder. It seemed the only option left was to contact the police, but having never called 911 in my life, I hesitated to make the report. After all, the claim of an intruder in my house was solely based on Johnson's word. Should I really trust what this man is saying? I stared at my phone's call button, unable to press it, and impatiently, Johnson said he'd call the police. Just then, the doorbell rang, startling me, and I accidentally dropped my phone. Wondering who it could be at this time, I peeked through the peephole of Johnson's apartment door. Seeing the person in black clothes outside left me speechless. Mr. Johnson's voice was trembling too. He must be scared as well. Trying to steady my shaking body, I answered, "It's my mother." To Mr. Johnson, my response might have seemed anticlimactic. However, the fact that my mother was standing in front of Johnson's door next to my apartment brought an unbelievable amount of fear. What's going on? Mr. Johnson's voice trembled as well. Could it be that the person I mistook for a stalker was your mother? If so, I'm really sorry. That's a huge misunderstanding. I apologize. Mr. Johnson apologized to me, but I shook my head. No, it's not that. It's just that. I hesitated to tell Johnson that my mother was toxic and that I hadn't even given her the address of this apartment. Before I could, my mother banged on the door, saying, "Hello, excuse me. I think my daughter is in there. Could she come out, please?" My mother's loud voice echoed in the hallway, making me jump. How did she know where I live? And how did she know I was here? I flung open the door, and my mother said, "Oh, Luna, finally found you. I've been trying to contact you, but you've been ignoring me. I just wanted to see you so badly. I came here. Aren't you coming home yet?" Seeing my mother standing there as if it were the most natural thing made me feel nauseous. "Mom, how did you know where I live? And how did you know I was here?" I had so many questions, dressed all in black, just like Johnson described, like a stalker. And how did she know where my house and whereabouts were? Why was she sneaking around behind my back? Well, that's easy. I put GPS trackers in that smartphone and wallet. I was shocked by my mother's revelation. The smartphone and wallet were gifts for my mother for special occasions. I had been using the same smartphone for about 6 years, which means I've been monitored by my mother all this time. A chill ran down my spine, and I swallowed hard. At first, it was just a smartphone, but you sometimes leave it at home, right? So I thought if I put GPS trackers in both the phone and the wallet, you'd always have one with you. You're my precious daughter, Luna. I've always been worried about you, thinking what if something dangerous happened. Watching my mother speak so nonchalantly, I completely lost my composure. I thought that becoming a working adult meant I had finally gained true freedom, earning my own money, doing what I wanted when I wanted. I thought I could enjoy such basic freedoms that everyone else takes for granted. But it turned out I was just dancing in the palm of my mother's hand all along. If this continues, my life will forever be controlled by my mother. I can't stand that. I was done having my life thrown into disarray by my mother. Mom. I called out to her in a very calm voice. My mother responded in her usual clueless tone. Yes, what is it? I'm never going back home again, Mom. Whenever I'm with you, I feel like I'm always being restrained. It's always been like that, hasn't it? You call me your precious daughter, your beloved daughter, but you've stifled everything I wanted to do. You neatly clipped my wings every time I tried to spread them, using worry as a plausible excuse. Each time, it hurt me deeply and caused me great pain. I am not your possession, Mom. I have my own will as a person, and I don't want it to be tainted by anyone else. So, Mom, let's cut ties. Please don't ever contact me again or come to see me. In a final outburst, I shouted all my feelings at her. My mother, hearing my declaration of cutting ties for the first time, visibly paled. She must have been shocked to be defied like this, always assuming I would comply with her cutting ties. What? Why, I'm your mother, Luna. Look, I didn't come today to restrain you. That's right. I just thought of borrowing some money from you. That's all I came for. My mother, now in disarray, suddenly claimed she wanted to borrow money, which made no sense. Money? What are you talking about, Mom? Are you in debt? Were you planning to steal money from your daughter, who earns a lot? You never intended to borrow, did you? You sneaked into my apartment to steal money, right? Everything clicked about why she had been in my apartment for 3 hours. If she really wanted to see me, she would have called or texted. But there was no contact from her today. She must have planned to steal from me and then see me afterward. But I don't keep cash at home. My bank books are hidden where they can't be easily found. Frustrated that she couldn't fulfill her intention to steal, she just wanted to satisfy her desire to see me and came next door. Thinking this, I felt disgusted, even considering her as my mother. No, I just wanted to borrow a little. My mother, used to such confrontations, began to panic. I couldn't trust a single word she said anymore. Gathering all my strength, I yelled at her again, enough. A person who tries to steal from her own daughter is not a mother. Never show your face to me again. I'm canceling my phone. Goodbye. Ignoring my mother's wide-eyed expression, I forcefully shut Johnson's door. For a while, she kept shouting, Luna, I'm sorry. Please open the door. It seemed the neighbors found the commotion suspicious and called the police. I heard the sirens of a patrol car and my mother arguing with the police in the hallway. The police managed to take her out of the building. Exhausted, I slumped to the ground. Are you okay? Mr. Johnson asked, looking at me with concern. I'm sorry for involving you in a family fight because of my mother. No, it's okay. Just rest for today. Thankful for Mr. Johnson's kindness, I returned to my room and crawled into bed. I decided to sleep without thinking about anything. My consciousness slowly faded into darkness. As for what happened afterward, I separated my family register from my mother's to create some distance. Though legally I couldn't cut ties completely with my biological parent, having my name removed from her family register made me feel like I had escaped her control, and I felt a sense of relief. Furthermore, I threw away the smartphone and wallet my mother gave me, replaced them with new ones, and moved to a different apartment. Of course, I haven't shared my new phone number with my mother. Now she won't be able to pinpoint my whereabouts. After that incident at my apartment, my mother, who had received a stern warning from the police for causing a disturbance, apparently became reclusive. As she confessed, after I left home and started working, She indulged in high-end brands of clothes and bags to distract herself from loneliness, accumulating considerable debt. Eventually, she ran out of living expenses and resorted to borrowing from high-end lenders. She is now troubled daily by debt collectors. However, I couldn't bring myself to help her. The fact that she had controlled and monitored me, even using GPS, is a shocking event that I can never forgive and is etched in my heart. If cutting ties with her serves as a punishment for her, so be it. I plan to live in a world without my mother. Even after moving to my new apartment, I kept in touch with Johnson, my former neighbor. Initially, I reached out to thank him, but he continued to stay in contact, and now we even go out for meals together. Having refused romantic relationships with men for a long time, escaping from my mother's control has made me more open to love. If things go well with Johnson, it would ironically be thanks to my mother. But I want to build a bright future with Mr. Johnson away from my mother's knowledge.
Hi, I'm Diana William, a third-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary. My life felt like a fairy tale until it unraveled into a nightmare. It all started at a fancy charity gala where I was representing my school. That's where I met James William. Tall, charming, and heir to his father's real estate empire, he stood out immediately. "You're different from the usual crowd here," he said, flashing a dazzling smile. "Care to grab coffee sometime?" One coffee date turned into luxurious dinners, weekend getaways, and a whirlwind romance. Having lost my parents in a car accident and recently my grandmother, the woman who raised me, I craved a family of my own. James seemed like the perfect answer. "You're all he talks about," his sister Patricia said during our first meeting, glancing at my modest dress. "We must take you shopping. The Williams have certain standards." Their mother, Eleanor, was even worse. During wedding planning, she dismissed every suggestion I made. "Darling, that venue is too quaint. We need something worthy of the William name." I tried to rationalize it. "They'll warm up to me eventually," I told my friend Maria after a tearful breakdown in the teacher's lounge. Maria wasn't convinced. "Girl, they're treating you like a project, not a person." My neighbor Donna echoed the sentiment. "Watch yourself, honey. Rich families like that don't welcome outsiders easily." But I married James anyway, hoping love would be enough. After moving into his penthouse, Eleanor became a constant presence. "The William name needs a strong male here," she'd say, her gaze lingering on my flat stomach. "I feel it. You'll give us a boy." When I finally got pregnant, Eleanor took over everything. She'd barge in unannounced with catalogs of baby clothes, all blue, neutral colors. "Nonsense. We know it's a boy." Then I found the bank statements. James had been sending massive amounts of our money to his family. "It's just family obligations," he snapped when I confronted him. "Mother says we need to support the William legacy." "That's our savings, James. Our money is family money, Diana. You need to understand how things work here." At one of Patricia's family dinners, I overheard them whispering in the kitchen. "She's still so common," Patricia said. "Teaching children. A real William wife should be on charity boards, not grading papers." "She'll learn," James replied casually. "We'll mold her." I touched my growing belly, dread settling in. What had I married into? Maria and Dana became my only refuge. "You're stronger than you think," Dana said one late night. "Don't let them dim your light." But the pressure kept mounting. My blood pressure was dangerously high during pregnancy, yet Eleanor's focus never shifted. At every doctor's visit, she grilled the staff. "Doctor, any updates on the baby's gender?" "Mrs. William, we need to prioritize your daughter-in-law's health," my doctor replied firmly. Eleanor waved her off. "The gender is critical for family planning." James was no help. Between work, endless family meetings, and vague excuses, I was often left alone. One morning, I sat in a waiting room, exhausted and dreading Eleanor's inevitable interference. She arrived unannounced, as usual. I told James I'd handle this appointment. "He has important matters to attend to," she said dismissively. "I'd rather have my husband here," I replied, barely concealing my frustration. "Don't be difficult, Diana. The family comes first." The ultrasound technician began the scan. "There's your baby," she said, smiling. "And congratulations. It's a girl." Tears of joy streamed down my face, but Eleanor's expression hardened. The ride home was painfully silent until she called Patricia. "Disappointing news. We'll need to discuss options. That evening, while making tea to calm my nerves, I noticed James's phone on the counter. A message from Patricia popped up. Mom's right. Diana needs an attitude adjustment. This girl's situation isn't ideal. My hands shook as I scrolled up. James' reply read, I know, Mom says we either show her the William way or cut our losses. Losses? My breath caught as I instinctively cradled my belly. This wasn't just a bad marriage, it was a trap. I thought work would be my escape. Eleanor ensured that even my work wasn't safe. She started showing up at Riverside Elementary, cornering my colleagues in the break room. Poor James is so worried. She'd sigh dramatically. Diana's been so emotionally unstable lately. The pregnancy has taken such a toll on her mental state. Before long, teachers I'd worked with for years began avoiding me. One day, I overheard whispered conversations in the hallway. Did you hear? Apparently, she's having episodes at home. I heard Eleanor say they're worried about her teaching. She's not handling the pregnancy well at all. Such a shame. By my 8th month, my blood pressure was dangerously high. My doctor was adamant. Mrs. William, you need complete bed rest. Your readings are alarming. But Eleanor waved the advice off. There's a crucial charity gala this weekend. The William family must be represented. Weakness isn't a William trait. Mother. I protested weakly, the doctor said. I raised 2 children without all this coddling, she snapped. You'll be fine. I tried reaching out to Maria, desperate for support, but Patricia intercepted her attempts to visit. Diana's far too fragile for guests, Patricia would lie. Doctor's orders. But I just saw her leaving for a family function, Maria protested. Family is different, Patricia said smugly. We know how to handle her condition. The night I went into labor, 3 weeks early, I called James 17 times. When he finally arrived, the stench of whiskey and stale casino smoke clung to him. Eleanor and Patricia strutted in behind him, their presence suffocating. We'll handle everything, Eleanor announced to the delivery room staff. The William family has a very specific way of doing things. But my birth plan. I protested weakly. Darling, those plans are for common people, Eleanor said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. We know what's best. James, please, I begged, reaching for him. But he stepped back, his eyes glued to his phone. Through the pain of contractions, I realized with crushing clarity that I was utterly alone in a room full of people who were supposed to be my family. After 20 hours of grueling labor, my daughter Emma was born at 3:47 a.m. Tears of joy streamed down my face as I reached for her. But Eleanor was already on the phone. Yes, it's unfortunate. A girl, just as we feared. No need for congratulations. James stood at the window, his back to us, while Patricia smirked in the corner, her fingers flying across her phone. #family disappointment, she muttered under her breath. Can I hold my baby? I asked weakly. Better let us clean her up first, a nurse said hesitantly, but Eleanor intercepted. Catherine needs rest. The next day was a waking nightmare. Every time I pressed the call button, the nurses delayed their responses. One even said coldly, "We heard you're having a difficult time adjusting." I just need help with breastfeeding, I pleaded. Perhaps formula would be better, she replied. Your mother-in-law mentioned you're quite emotional. By discharge time, I was desperate to leave. James appeared briefly, disheveled in a wrinkled suit. Urgent business at the office, he mumbled. Mother will handle everything. James, please, don't leave me, I begged. Stop being clingy, Catherine. It's not attractive, Eleanor snapped. We'll be back shortly. Hours passed. Emma was crying, and no one came. Finally, a nurse entered. Ma'am, we need this room for incoming patients. But my family is coming back, I protested. That's not what Mrs. Williams Sr. told us. She said you'd arrange your own transportation. I don't have my phone or wallet. Not our concern, ma'am. Please vacate the room. Clutching Emma to my chest, I walked into the biting January wind, still in my thin hospital gown. We had to walk 3 miles before someone stopped. Oh my God, are you okay? A woman called out, rushing toward us. I'm Lisa. Are you seriously walking after just giving birth? I don't have a choice, I stammered. Like how you don't. Get in the car. Lisa drove me home, glancing at me in the rearview mirror with concern. This isn't right. Do you have someone to call? They took my phone for safekeeping. Once home, Lisa helped settle Emma and left me her number. Call me, I mean it. The next day, Maria stormed in with hospital security footage. Look what I found, she hissed. Your mother-in-law paid the nurses to ignore you. That evil witch, Dana spat, pulling out her phone. And listen to this. She played a recording of Patricia at the salon. Mother's plan is brilliant, Patricia's voice purred. No phone, no money, no support. We'll break that teacher down to size. She'll learn her place or lose everything. Later that night, while searching James's desk, I found a stack of papers, casino receipts, loans from his parents, hundreds of thousands of dollars gone. I stared at Emma sleeping peacefully, my heart breaking and hardening at once. Lisa's card sat on my nightstand, a lifeline. We deserve better than this, baby girl, I whispered, stroking her tiny hand. Mommy's done playing their games. Lisa's help became a lifeline, not just for survival, but for justice. She landed me a teaching position at Westbrook Academy, doubled the salary, and a fresh start. While I outwardly appeared to move on, I was quietly building my case against the Williams family. You'll never believe who I ran into, Maria said one afternoon over coffee, her voice low but urgent. William and Associates' former accountant. My heart raced. What does he know? Everything, she replied. Richard's fraud, James's gambling, years of cooked books and laundered money. And he kept receipts. If he has proof, Lisa said, her eyes gleaming. This could end them. As we pieced the puzzle together, the cracks in Patricia's Instagram-perfect life began to show. An anonymous tip, thank you, Dana, led her husband to the Continental Hotel's records. 3 different men, Dana revealed with relish. And guess what? One's a business rival of Richard's. I've got photos and receipts going back 2 years, Maria added. And the best part? He's on Richard's board of directors. Meanwhile, the hospital footage proved even more damning than I'd expected. Lisa's sister, a legal clerk, helped trace the money trail. These bribes go way beyond the maternity ward, she explained. Eleanor's been buying silence for years, medical board members, social workers, even a judge. How deep does this go? I asked, stunned. Deep enough to drown them all. Each piece of evidence was a ticking time bomb. I stored copies in multiple secure locations, waiting for the perfect moment. We need to move carefully, Lisa warned. One wrong step and they'll bury everything. Rich families like this are experts at covering their tracks. But then James made the fatal error. Desperation drove him to dip into company funds to cover his casino debts, and the SEC had already started sniffing around. This could blow everything wide open, Maria's accountant contact confirmed. They're already looking at offshore accounts. I waited until they were at their weakest. The divorce papers hit James's desk the same day the fraud investigation went public. We need to discuss custody, his lawyer called. Panicked. Sure, I said coldly, right after I send these hospital videos to the medical board. Or maybe I'll start with James's drunk driving footage. What do you think? Gambling receipts, perhaps. What do you want? Full custody, and for the Williams family to stay far, far away from us. The dominoes fell perfectly. Patricia's affairs destroyed crucial business alliances, and her lover on the board turned state's evidence against Richard. James's gambling investigation exposed years of company theft. The Williams mansion, their pride and joy, was auctioned off to cover legal debts. James showed up at my office one day, desperate. Dana, please. They're investigating everything. I can change. I can help you. I met his eyes without flinching. The only William I acknowledge is my daughter. There's the door. Leave before I call the FBI with those offshore account numbers. The great William dynasty crumbled under federal investigations. James lost his real estate license. Patricia's scandals left her socially exiled. Richard faced prison time. And Eleanor? She moved into a modest condo, stripped of everything she valued. Mommy, can we paint my room yellow? Emma asked one sunny afternoon in our new home. Of course, baby, I said, smiling. This house is about joy now, not secrets. The empire they built on lies collapsed under the weight of the truth. I didn't have to throw a single stone. I just waited for their house of cards to fall, holding the evidence that would bury them all. As I look back, one question lingers. Was I too harsh in rejecting Eleanor's tearful apology at their mansion, where she begged to know Emma? Some might say everyone deserves a second chance, especially with their grandchild. Others would argue that toxic people never truly change. They simply adapt their manipulation tactics when they lose power. What would you have done in my position? Would you allow Emma to know her grandmother, now that the Williams family has lost everything? Or was I right to sever ties for good? Share your thoughts below. Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer Jackson. Once I was the devoted daughter-in-law who bent over backward trying to please an impossible mother-in-law. Now, I'm someone who stood up for herself and discovered the power of karma. Believe me, you'll want to hear how this story unfolds. From the moment I could reach the kitchen counter, I knew baking was my passion. Growing up in the Boston suburbs, I'd spend hours experimenting with recipes in my mom's cozy kitchen. Now, at 32, I'm living my dream as the owner of Sweet Canvas, a boutique bakery nestled in Boston's historic district. The aroma of fresh pastries and the smiles of happy customers make every pre-dawn wake-up worth it. It's actually where I met Michael Thompson, my husband. He walked in for coffee, stayed for a cupcake, and asked me out right there. A whirlwind year later, we were married. That's when Patricia Thompson entered my life. Michael's mother, with her sharp designer suits and sharper tongue, had a way of turning compliments into critiques. You know what would make these desserts even better? Her voice echoes in my memory as she stood before the bakery display case, her critical eye scanning my creations. My friend's daughter runs a bakery in Manhattan. She uses imported French butter. Amanda, my assistant, shot me a sympathetic look while I mustered a polite smile. This was Patricia's way, offering unsolicited advice with an air of superiority. Just then, my sister Rachel strolled in. There's my favorite baker, and those are definitely my favorite lemon squares in the window, she declared, her warmth a much-needed balm. Rachel has always been my rock. The bell jingled as Michael entered. Mom, I thought you had a meeting with your decorator. Just stopping by to help Jennifer with a few suggestions, Patricia replied, adjusting her scarf with a flourish. Someone needs to guide her. I glanced at Michael, silently pleading for backup. He offered his usual helpless shrug, leaving me to fend for myself. Later that evening, as Amanda helped close up shop, she leaned against the counter. You don't have to take this, Jess. Your bakery's thriving. Didn't we just get a glowing write-up in Boston Magazine? I nodded, though my voice wavered. I'm trying to keep the peace. Besides, the article speaks for itself. Maybe, Amanda said, her expression troubled. But something about Patricia feels off. Be careful, okay. I brushed off her concern. If only I'd known what lay ahead. Patricia's meddling was far more insidious than I could have imagined. The signs were all there, but I missed them until it was nearly too late. Patricia's 60th birthday party was meant to be the event of the season. When she asked me to cater it, I thought it was my chance to finally win her approval. For 3 days straight, I worked tirelessly, hand-painted macarons, a 6-tier cake adorned with delicate sugar flowers, and an array of her favorite French pastries. The night of the party, the marble foyer glittered with Boston's elite. As I arranged the final dessert display, I overheard Patricia's voice drifting from a nearby group. Oh, the cleaning service did a wonderful job with the setup, she said, waving a manicured hand. Maria, or whatever her name is, also bakes. My hands froze. Amanda, carrying a tray, nearly dropped it. Someone in the group corrected her. That's your daughter-in-law. Oh, yes, of course, Patricia replied with a dismissive laugh. She does own that little shop. Speaking of bakeries, Catherine, how's your daughter's shop in New York? Michael always raves about it when he visits. My heart clenched. Michael visits New York? He'd never mentioned that. Later, while retrieving my coat from Patricia's study, I overheard her voice again, cold and calculating. The plan is working perfectly, she said into the phone. Once that shabby bakery fails its health inspection next week, Michael will finally see she's not good enough for this family. Catherine's daughter has real potential. The words hit me like a freight train. My phone buzzed, a text from one of my suppliers. We regret to inform you that we must terminate our contract. We've received complaints about your business. That night, I confronted Michael. Your mother introduced me as a cleaning lady at her own party, which I catered. I fumed. Michael sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Come on, Jess. You know how she gets at these events. She's under a lot of pressure. Pressure? I shot back. She's trying to set you up with Catherine's daughter. Michael's laugh was hollow. Don't be ridiculous. Mom's just networking. The conversation went nowhere, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. The next morning, Amanda called, her voice urgent. Jess, you need to see this. She forwarded me emails she'd received, and my heart sank. Patricia had been contacting our suppliers, our bank, even health inspectors, spreading malicious lies about Sweet Canvas. I can't believe she'd go this far, I said, my voice trembling with anger. Believe it, Amanda replied grimly. And there's more. Remember those bad reviews that almost ruined us last month? I traced the IP addresses, they all came from the Thompson estate. As if on cue, Rachel burst into the bakery. Sis, you won't believe what I just heard at the gym, she said, breathless. Patricia's telling everyone you bought your good reviews and that your mentorship program is just for publicity. I stared at the photos from the party on my phone. Michael hadn't come home last night. In every shot, he was standing beside Catherine's daughter, with Patricia beaming in the background. The betrayal burned deep, but something else began to surface. Determination. If Patricia wants a war, she'll get one, I said, my voice steady. But she'll learn I'm not so easily eliminated. I've built my business from scratch before, and this time I have proof of her schemes. The next morning, I began sifting through every email Sweet Canvas had received over the past year. Amanda's tech-savvy friend helped us recover deleted messages, and what we found left us stunned. Look at this thread, Amanda said, pointing to her screen. Patricia posed as a health inspector to scare off our suppliers. She even faked documents. Before I could respond, Rachel rushed in, phone in hand. Jess, you have to see this, she said. She pulled up security footage from her real estate office. It showed Michael meeting with Catherine's daughter and signing papers. He's been taking out loans against his properties, Rachel explained. Patricia's been covering for him, using her connections to hide the paperwork. My phone buzzed, a call from an unfamiliar New York number. Mrs. Jackson, a man said. This is Marcus Chen from the National Food Network. We're interested in featuring Sweet Canvas in our Hidden Gems series. Hours later, Patricia must have caught wind of it. She started spreading rumors of food poisoning at my bakery, but she didn't know I'd been documenting everything. Marcus called back, his tone calm but resolute. Mrs. Thompson, we received your intriguing email about Sweet Canvas. Funny thing though, we also received evidence of your systematic harassment campaign, including attempts to sabotage a youth culinary program. I could practically hear Patricia's world crumbling through the phone. Then came the final blow. Michael's office called to inform me that his gambling debts had exposed a massive fraud scheme at his firm. Not even Patricia's social connections could save him this time. You know what's ironic? Amanda said as we watched the scandal unfold on the news. If Patricia hadn't tried to destroy you, none of this would have come to light. My phone buzzed again. Another call from the National Food Network. They wanted to feature not just the bakery, but our entire youth mentorship program. And they weren't the only ones interested. A year has passed since Patricia's infamous birthday party. Sweet Canvas now boasts 3 locations across Boston, and our youth culinary program has become a national model. Today, I'm catering the mayor's annual charity gala, the very event Patricia once chaired with such pride. Did you see this? Amanda asked, showing me her tablet. Michael's firm had made the Wall Street Journal. The scandal not only exposed his gambling debts, but years of corporate fraud. Patricia's estate sale, she moved into a smaller condo. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's taken up baking classes. A small part of me hopes she finds peace, far away from my kitchen, of course. Miss Jackson. Lily, now my head pastry chef, called from the kitchen. The Food Network crew is here for the final filming. The documentary, Second Chances and Fresh Starts, premieres next month. It tells the story of Sweet Canvas and the 201 culinary careers we've helped launch this year alone. As I stepped into the bakery's bustling front room, the mayor's wife approached with a warm smile. Jennifer, the other board members were right. Your story is so inspiring. We'd love for you to speak at next month's Women in Business Summit. Rachel arrived moments later, holding her phone with an incredulous expression. You won't believe this, she said. Turns out Patricia was skimming donations from those charity events she used to run. The DA's office is investigating. Before I could respond, a group of Patricia's former society friends approached me hesitantly. Mrs. Jackson, we're launching a scholarship foundation for underprivileged youth, one of them began. Would you consider joining our board? The irony wasn't lost on me. These were the same women who once looked down on my little bakery. Now, they were seeking my advice, not for revenge, but because they'd finally seen what genuine community support looks like. My phone buzzed again. Another email from Michael's lawyer. He was still trying to claim part of Sweet Canvas in the divorce. Thankfully, my business documentation was flawless. A lesson hard-earned from watching Patricia's schemes unravel. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, doing good, and letting toxic people face the natural consequences of their actions. Our story doesn't end here. Sweet Canvas has grown to 5 locations across New England, each with its own youth mentorship program. Last month, Lily opened her own cafe, and I couldn't have been prouder watching her cut the ribbon. Michael? He moved to Chicago for a fresh start after completing a rehabilitation program. I wish him well, but that chapter of my life is firmly closed. Patricia occasionally sends messages through mutual acquaintances asking to reconcile, but I've learned that some bridges are better left uncrossed. Just last month, the mayor's office named me Boston's Entrepreneur of the Year. During my acceptance speech, I looked out at the audience, Amanda, Rachel, my students, and even some of Patricia's old friends who've become genuine supporters. Success, I told them, isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Have you ever experienced someone trying to undermine your success while pretending to help? What would you have done in my position, maintained silence as I initially did, or confronted their manipulation immediately? Some people say I should have given Patricia another chance after everything came to light. What do you think? Did I make the right choice by maintaining firm boundaries? Or do you believe in second chances, even with toxic family members? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hi, everyone. My name's Susan Jack. I'm a 28-year-old marketing executive at Sterling & Brooks, one of New York's top firms. On the surface, my life seemed perfect. A thriving career, a loving husband, and a future full of promise. But everything unraveled because of my in-laws. You killed it in that presentation today, James said, wrapping his arms around me as I stirred a pot of pasta. That's my husband, I thought, smiling. Cheerful, supportive. Everything I thought I needed. Thanks, babe. Sarah really helped me fine-tune the projections, I said, thinking of my mentor. This could finally lead to that promotion we've been talking about. With your talent, they'd be fools not to promote you. Sarah had told me earlier during our lunch break. Everything felt like it was falling into place until that Sunday dinner at my in-laws. Patricia, my mother-in-law, sat at the head of the oversized dining table, her sharp eyes locked on me. So, Susan, darling, she began with a saccharine smile. I hear a promotion is on the horizon. The salary bump must be substantial. Mom, that's not really appropriate, James interjected weakly, fiddling with his fork. Oh, hush, James. We're family, Patricia said dismissively before turning back to me. Speaking of family, Emma here has a brilliant business idea. Emma, my sister-in-law, perked up. It's a luxury pet accessories line, very exclusive. I just need some startup capital. Family should help family, Patricia chimed in. George, my father-in-law, nodded silently as always. I forced a smile. I'll have to think about it. This wasn't their first pitch. Last month, it was a yoga studio. Before that, a juice bar. Each venture failed spectacularly within weeks. Back at work the next day, I was distracted, my mind racing. Everything okay? Sarah asked, noticing my distracted state. In-law drama, I admitted. They want me to fund another one of Emma's business ventures. Careful, Sarah warned. Start setting boundaries now, or it'll only get worse. But Patricia didn't understand boundaries. She started showing up at my office unannounced. Just happened to be in the neighborhood, she'd say loudly, ensuring my colleagues overheard. Thought I'd see if my successful daughter-in-law could spare some time for family. The whispers started. Must be nice having rich in-laws, a coworker muttered. If they only knew. That evening, as I reviewed a quarterly report, my phone buzzed. Emma, hey sis, about that investment. Mom says with your new promotion, you could easily spare $50K. Family helps family, right? I showed the message to James. Maybe we should help, he suggested hesitantly. You know how Mom gets. James, this is getting out of hand, I said firmly. Your sister needs to stand on her own feet. Their family, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. He fidgeted with his wedding ring. Something wasn't right. Susan, we need to talk, James said later that night, his voice trembling. I put down my laptop. What's wrong? I messed up. I owe some people money. A lot of money. My stomach dropped. How much? 200,000, he whispered, avoiding my eyes. What? I've been gambling. It started small, but it got out of control. Mom's been helping cover it. But now, the loan sharks are threatening me. Mom said you could liquidate your retirement account. It's the only way. I stared at him, speechless. The next day, Emma cornered me at the office. Mom says you're being difficult about the papers. We need access to your accounts. It's for James's protection too, she said with a self-righteous glare. Get out, I snapped. And don't come near my workplace again. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Jessica, my office rival, eavesdropping with a sly smile. That evening, I received a bank notification. James had tried to add Patricia as a joint account holder. Furious, I confronted him. How dare you share my private financial information? I demanded. They're just trying to help, James protested. Emma's business plan is solid this time. If you just... No, I'm not funding another failure, I said, my voice shaking. This stops now. The next day, Patricia was back, this time stationed near the accounting department, her voice deliberately loud. Such a shame about Susan. Always wondered how she could afford that new car, Patricia said, with an exaggerated air of concern. You know what they say about sudden wealth. Later, I overheard Jessica chatting with Emma in the cafeteria. Your sister-in-law handles some pretty big accounts, Jessica said, her tone conspiratorial. But those numbers, they never quite add up. My hands shook as I called Sarah. They're trying to destroy everything I've built, I said, my voice barely steady. Document everything, she advised. Every visit, every conversation. And Susan, check your personal accounts. Now. I did. My stomach dropped. Someone had tried accessing my retirement account 3 times that week. Monday morning, an email from HR hit my inbox. Subject: concerning reports. Mrs. Jack, we've received anonymous complaints about aggressive behavior, mishandling of client funds, and emotional instability. Please arrange a meeting to discuss. I knew exactly where this was coming from. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a bank alert. Joint account transfer, $45,000 to external account. Heart pounding, I called the bank. Yes, Mrs. Jack, the representative said. Your husband made the transfer this morning. As a joint account holder, he has full access. I rushed to the bathroom, fighting back tears. That's when I overheard Patricia's voice echoing down the hallway, speaking to my biggest client. I hate to say this about family, she said in a hushed tone that carried, but we're all worried about Susan's episodes. The mood swings, the erratic spending. James is at his wit's end. Before I could confront her, chaos erupted in the conference room. Emma burst into my presentation, tears streaming down her face. How could you? After everything we've done for you, she wailed. You promised to help with my business. I took out loans based on your word. Now I'm going to lose everything. My clients shifted uncomfortably as security escorted her out. Across the room, I saw Jessica recording the entire scene on her phone. Within hours, the video was circulating through office email chains. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I went through James's laptop. Buried in his emails, I found the thread that shattered my illusions. Patricia, Susan's up for that promotion. Once it's official, we can start phase 1. Emma, you know what to do with Jessica. James, don't worry, baby sister. We did this with Rachel too. She never saw it coming. Rachel, James' ex-fiancée. I'd always wondered why she ended things so abruptly. It took me 3 hours of social media digging to find her. When she answered my call, her voice was cautious. Susan, James's wife, she said hesitantly. I've been expecting this call for years. We met at a cafe 2 towns over. Rachel's hands trembled as she slid an old journal across the table. They did the same thing to me, she said. First, it was small loans. Then, James's gambling debt surfaced. Patricia started showing up at my workplace, checking in. When I refused to give them access to my trust fund, they destroyed me. I lost my job, my reputation. I had to move states, but I kept everything: emails, recordings, bank statements. I've been waiting for their next victim to find me. My phone buzzed with another email from HR. Multiple complaints received regarding unprofessional conduct. It's happening exactly like before, Rachel said grimly. But this time, they picked the wrong target. I showed her my own evidence, screenshots of James sharing my financial information, recordings of Patricia's slanderous conversations near my office, bank transfer records, and Emma's stage meltdowns. There were others, Rachel revealed. 3 more before me. James's high school girlfriend, his college fiancé, even his first wife. They target successful women, drain them dry, then move on. Patricia orchestrates everything. That night, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. Inside were statements, photos, and recordings from 2 other women. Their stories mirrored mine. Minutes later, my phone lit up with a text from James. "Baby, I know you're upset, but Mom's right. Family has to stick together. Just sign the account transfer papers and all this ugliness can stop." I stared at my evidence folder, now bulging with years of their schemes. They thought I was just another victim. They had no idea I was about to become their worst nightmare. The next morning, I texted James. "Coming home now. You're right, we need to talk." Let them think they'd won. Let them think I was breaking. While they were playing checkers, I was setting up a chessboard. The board meeting was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. I watched Patricia and Emma stroll into the lobby, their faces smug. They had no idea they were walking into my trap. "Before we begin," I said, placing 5 thick folders on the conference table, "I have evidence of systematic harassment and attempted financial fraud." The board members leaned forward as I played recordings, displayed emails, and presented bank statements. Then came the testimonies. Rachel and the other women had agreed to record video statements. One by one, they shared their stories, accounts of being systematically targeted, harassed at their workplaces, and financially drained by the Miller family. Their voices, steady and resolute, painted a damning picture of years of manipulation. As the videos played, a commotion broke out in the lobby. Patricia and Emma, oblivious to what was unfolding upstairs, were approached by security. Their phones buzzed incessantly as the fallout began. An anonymous tip had triggered formal investigations into Emma's string of fraudulent businesses. Her investors were already pulling out, furious over the revelations. "Mrs. Miller, Miss Miller," the security guard said firmly. "Please step away from the building. This is outrageous." Patricia shrieked, clutching her pearls. "I'm here to report my unstable daughter-in-law." My phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. "It's done. Police just picked up James at the casino. Loan sharks turned over evidence of his debts and threats." The board's decision was swift and unanimous. "Mrs. Jack," the chairperson said, his voice tinged with regret, "we owe you an apology. Your promotion to regional director is effective immediately." Later that afternoon, Emma's remaining investors stormed her office, armed with proof of her 5 previous scams. Someone had sent them court records showing she'd been taking deposits for non-existent luxury products for years. Meanwhile, Patricia's carefully curated social circle was imploding. Her country club friends began receiving emails detailing her decades-long involvement in financial fraud schemes, long predating James's gambling issues. Patricia's perfect plan wasn't just unraveling. It was collapsing in spectacular fashion. 6 months later, I sat in my corner office reviewing quarterly reports. Sarah knocked on the door and handed me a newspaper. "You'll want to see this," she said with a smirk. The headline read, "Local Family Faces Bankruptcy Following Fraud Investigations." The article detailed how James had lost everything to the loan sharks. Emma was facing legal action over her scams, and Patricia and George's assets were frozen while authorities investigated decades of financial misconduct. "Miss Jack," my assistant interrupted, stepping into the office. "There's a disturbance downstairs." On the security feed, I saw them, Patricia and Emma, attempting to force their way into the building. Their designer clothes were noticeably worn, their once luxury car now replaced by a battered old sedan. Security promptly escorted them out as they screamed about family loyalty. My phone buzzed with one final text from James. "Please, Susan, we're about to lose everything." I stared at the message for a moment before deleting it. Sometimes the best revenge is thriving while toxic people drown in the consequences of their own actions. Success truly is the best revenge. Now I have a question for you. What would you have done in my position? Would you have forgiven James and his family if they showed remorse to maintain peace, or stood your ground and exposed them despite their being family? At what point does someone lose the right to claim family ties? When is enough truly enough? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Tristan, and this is the story of how I survived one of the most manipulative people I've ever met. 2 years ago, my life changed forever when I married into the Anderson family. At the time, I thought I was stepping into a fairy tale. I'm a financial analyst at Morgan Stanley, and that's where it all started, at a little coffee shop near Wall Street. Mark spilled his drink all over my brand new blazer, and what began as an embarrassing encounter turned into weekly lunches. Before I knew it, we were walking down the aisle. "Welcome to the family, darling." Those were the first words Patricia Anderson said to me at our engagement party. Dressed in a pristine Channel suit with pearls elegantly draped around her neck, she looked every inch the socialite she was. Mark has finally found someone worthy of the Anderson name. At the time, I felt lucky. The Andersons seemed like the perfect family. Patricia, Mark's mother, hosted extravagant dinner parties in their Greenwich mansion. His brother David was always cracking jokes, and Emma, his sister-in-law, quickly became my closest confidant. Our Sunday dinners at the mansion became a cherished tradition. One day, Emma and I were chatting over lunch when she casually mentioned Patricia's role in managing the family's finances. "Mom oversees everything. Investments, accounts, you name it," Emma said. "She calls it protecting the family's interests." I shrugged it off. I'm sure she just wants everyone to succeed. Emma's expression darkened. "Just be careful, Anna. There's more to it than you think." I dismissed her words, focusing instead on my thriving career and the beautiful brownstone Mark and I had just purchased in Brooklyn. Everything felt perfect. But then, during Sunday dinners, I began noticing things. "David, honey, did you make that investment I suggested?" Patricia would ask. "Yes, Mom. Transferred the funds yesterday. That's my good boy." Or, "Emma, what about those tech stocks we discussed?" Emma's face would tighten. "We decided to hold off." "Nonsense. I'll come by tomorrow and sort it out. Family must stick together." When I mentioned these dynamics to Mark, he defended his mother. "Mom's been managing family money for decades," he said. "She turned Dad's inheritance into a fortune. We're lucky to have her guidance." I nodded but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One afternoon, during coffee with Emma, I brought it up. "You know what's funny? For all the talk about investments, I've never actually seen a single report or portfolio statement." Emma stirred her coffee slowly. "There's something you should know." Before she could say more, her phone buzzed. Patricia was summoning her to the mansion. Emma left abruptly, but the worry in her eyes lingered with me. A few months later, everything changed. Mark lost his job after a sudden merger at his firm. With our brownstone under renovation and bills piling up, Patricia swooped in. "You can't possibly survive on savings alone, darling," she said. "The mansion has plenty of room." "It's temporary, Mom," Mark assured her. "I've already got interviews lined up." "Nonsense. Pack your bags. I won't take no for an answer." Living at the mansion seemed fine at first until Patricia cornered me in the kitchen one morning. "Anna, dear, we need to discuss finances. The family pools resources. It's how we protect each other. I appreciate the offer, but I manage our finances just fine." Her smile vanished. "Don't be difficult. I just need your banking passwords to set everything up." "Sorry, but that's not happening. Our accounts are separate." Her eyes turned cold. "I see. Working in finance has made you distrustful. How disappointing." Later that week, while gardening, I overheard her during her bridge club. "Poor Mark," Patricia's voice drifted through the open window. "He married her for love, but now I wonder. Did you know she refuses to contribute to family investments? Keeping her money separate, how suspicious." The whispers spread. At charity galas, conversations hushed when I approached. Even Mark began acting differently. "Babe," he said one night, "maybe Mom has a point. We're living in her house now." "Mark, I just got promoted to senior analyst. We'll be fine." "You didn't tell me about the promotion?" "See, this is exactly what Mom means about you being secretive with money. The tension boiled over at Sunday dinner. Patricia, glowing with smug satisfaction, clinked her wine glass to gather everyone's attention. Anna dear, I heard about your lovely bonus. Patricia began with her trademark condescension. Now's the perfect time to discuss integrating you into the family portfolio. I straightened in my chair, my voice firm. Patricia, my finances aren't up for discussion. Her expression darkened. Ungrateful girl, living under my roof, enjoying Anderson wealth, while hoarding your own money. What are you hiding? I'm hiding nothing, I shot back, holding my ground. I'm protecting my financial independence. Independence, she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. There's no such thing in this family. Mark, are you going to let her disrespect me like this? Mark stared down at his plate, silent. Mark? I prompted, my voice trembling. Anna, he said quietly, please, just do what Mom asks. No, I said, my voice stronger now. This is financial abuse, and I won't be part of it. Patricia rose from her seat, her face flushed with fury. How dare you accuse me of abuse? Get out of my house. Now. I turned to Mark, hoping for support. His shoulders slumped as he mumbled, maybe you should go, Anna. Just until you're ready to be reasonable. Tears burned my eyes as I packed a bag, Patricia's venomous voice echoing through the halls. She never understood our family values, always so selfish, that one. Emma caught me at the door. Anna, wait. Not now. Emma, I said, my voice breaking. I can't. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with texts from Mark. Mom's right, you're tearing this family apart. I checked into a hotel, my hands shaking as I called my best friend, Claire. Can I crash at your place for a while? I asked. Of course, honey. What happened? I just found out what happens when you say no to Patricia Anderson. Little did Patricia know, her attempt to control me would mark the beginning of her downfall. There's something you need to see, Emma said, her voice unsteady as we met in a quiet cafe far from Greenwich. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements detailing systematic transfers from Emma's and David's accounts to Patricia's private holdings. She took everything, Anna, our savings, investments, David's inheritance from his aunt. It's all gone. And the family portfolio she keeps talking about, it doesn't exist. She's been using our money to maintain her lifestyle. The mansion, mortgaged to the hilt. Those designer clothes, our money. Even her charities are a front. My phone buzzed with another blow, divorce papers from Mark. The demands were ludicrous. Half my assets, including future earnings. She's trying to force your hand, Emma said. She's done this before. You need to talk to Jessica. Jessica, Mark's father's first wife, met me in a modest apartment, worlds away from the Anderson mansion's opulence. Let me guess, she said bitterly. She demanded access to your accounts too. I refused, just like you. Next thing I knew, Richard, her first son, was serving me divorce papers. She took everything in the settlement. Jessica revealed a disturbing pattern. Patricia had married into money 3 times. Each time she drained the family's finances dry. Her first husband died under suspicious circumstances after uncovering her schemes. Her second husband divorced her when she bankrupted him. Mark's father had been her last victim. Why didn't anyone stop her? I asked, horrified. Fear, shame, family loyalty. Patricia is a master manipulator, but look at these. Jessica pulled out documents showing years of money transfers, shell companies, and fraudulent loans. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mark. Mom says if you agree to transfer your assets to the family account, we can work things out. I laughed bitterly. Not this time, Patricia. That night, Emma called, her voice frantic. Anna, she's pressuring David to cut me off. Says I've been conspiring against the family by helping you. We need to stop her. Emma, how much evidence do you have? Everything. I've been documenting her schemes for years. I was too scared to act alone. Send it all to me, I said. I'll need Jessica's help too. For days, I worked through the files. My financial expertise helped uncover the full scope of Patricia's fraud. She hadn't just stolen from her family. She was running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme through her charity foundation, using new family members' money to pay off older debts. Another text from Mark. Mom says you're spreading lies. How could you? Ask her about the foundation's missing millions, Mark. Ask her where your father's real estate fortune went. Then came the call. Is this Anna Tristan? The voice was unfamiliar. Yes. Who's this? My name's Catherine Weber. Patricia's trying to pull me into her family investment scheme. I heard you might have information. I smiled grimly. Patricia's web of lies was unraveling, and she didn't even know it. Meet me tomorrow, I said. Bring any documentation you have. It's time everyone learned the truth about Patricia Anderson. Anna, have you seen the news? Emma's excited voice crackled through the phone as I navigated the morning traffic. What's going on? I asked, adjusting the volume. Patricia's charity foundation is under investigation. Anonymous emails expose suspicious transactions in her accounts. The Greenwich gossip mill is in overdrive. I smirked, imagining the chaos unfolding in Patricia's world. It wasn't long before the headlines hit every corner of her carefully curated social circle. Did you hear about the Anderson Foundation scandal? All those charity galas, just a front. My sister almost invested with her last week. Can you believe it? The dominoes fell quickly. Private loans Patricia had taken out using forged documents all came due at once. Creditors circled like sharks, demanding payment. Anna, you need to see this. Jessica's email pinged my phone with attached images of loan documents. Mark's signature was plastered across them, obviously forged. She's getting sloppy, I muttered, shaking my head. At midnight, Mark's panicked call came through. Anna, Mom tried to access my accounts tonight. She had documents with my signature, but I never signed anything. What's happening? I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Finally asking the right questions, Mark, check your email. I sent you everything you need to know. The FBI didn't need my tips. They had been investigating Patricia's schemes for months. When they called me in as a witness, they thanked me for my detailed financial analysis. You helped us connect several key dots, Miss Tristan. Anna, please. Mark stood outside my apartment one rainy evening, his hair plastered to his face, desperation etched into his features. I was blind. I'm so sorry. Can we try again? Like you tried to help your mother take everything from me? I asked, my voice cold and steady. Go home, Mark. Emma and Jessica became my strongest allies. Together, we launched a support group for financial abuse survivors, hearing heartbreaking stories from people who had experienced manipulation and betrayal. Helping others heal helped us heal too. The mansion's being auctioned off, Emma mentioned during one of our weekly lunches. David finally sees the truth. We're starting over, far away from Patricia's shadow. When Patricia's sentencing made headlines minus 15 years for investment fraud, money laundering, and forgery, not a single family member attended her hearing. My career soared. My promotion to managing director came with a corner office overlooking Manhattan. On my desk sat a framed photo of Emma, Jessica, and me at our survivor group's first retreat. Looking out at the skyline, I smiled. Patricia thought she could break me by stripping away her family's support. Instead, she taught me something invaluable, my own strength. The Anderson fortune was gone, but I had built something better, true independence and real relationships rooted in honesty, not control. That evening, my phone buzzed. Emma and Jessica were waiting downstairs for our celebration dinner. My new book about surviving financial abuse had just hit the bestseller list. As I grabbed my coat, I thought back to Mark's rain-soaked apology. Sometimes the best revenge isn't watching toxic people fall. It's rising higher than they ever imagined you could. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? When Mark came begging for forgiveness, would you have given him a second chance, or is protecting your peace more important than any relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more survival stories like mine, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Hi, everyone. I'm Janice Chen, and this is how I turned the tables on someone who tried to destroy my life, just because I'm different. Adjusting my wheelchair, I surveyed the dining table. The centerpiece should go here, I suggested, angling for the perfect view. Exhausted from therapy, I still wanted everything to be flawless for tonight's dinner with James's family. Whatever you think, sweetheart, James said, placing a gentle kiss on my head. You've got an eye for these things. Even after 2 years of marriage, his touch gave me butterflies. Who would have thought a wheelchair-bound software engineer married to one of Manhattan's most eligible real estate developers? Maybe we should cancel, I murmured, the words slipping out. Your mom probably won't approve of my table settings either. James knelt beside me, his expression tender but firm. Hey, look at me. Mom will come around. She just needs time. 3 years isn't enough time, I muttered. She still winces every time my wheelchair makes a sound. Before James could reply, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my dress, steeling myself. He gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze before answering. James, darling. Victoria's voice echoed as she breezed in, barely glancing my way. Her perfume lingered as she surveyed the room. Oh, you've rearranged again. Janice did a beautiful job, James said warmly. Victoria sniffed. It's different. She turned, a gleam in her eye. Speaking of different, I brought someone along. Caroline Wilson's daughter, remember her? She just finished her MBA. Mom, James said, his tone icy. Unhappily married. Of course, James, she replied, feigning innocence. It's just networking. Strictly business. Dinner was a showcase of passive aggression. Victoria monopolized the conversation, weaving tales of country clubs and galas. James, the Hendersons are hosting a charity event next week. You must come. It's for such a good cause. I cleared my throat. We'd love to attend. Victoria's smile was thin. Oh, it's at the Metropolitan. I'm not sure they have appropriate access. They do, James interjected. I checked their website. Fully accessible. Victoria's tone remained syrupy sweet. Well, you know how these events are. Lots of dancing. It might be uncomfortable for some people. I tightened my grip on my fork. I may not dance, Victoria, but I can still enjoy an evening out with my husband. Of course, dear. I just worry about James. All this extra care. It must be exhausting for him. James slammed his glass down, breaking the tension. I think it's time for dessert. Later, as the city lights twinkled through our bedroom window, I sat in silence, staring out. James wrapped his arms around me from behind. I'm sorry about Mom. She was way out of line. Does she think I don't notice? I whispered. The conveniently scheduled events during my therapy, the family photos I'm excluded from, the endless parade of suitable women. She's trying to push me out. She'll accept us, Janice. What we have is real. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I leaned into his embrace, wishing I could believe him. But deep down, I knew Victoria Barrett wasn't done. Much later, I wheeled toward the study and froze at the half-closed door, voices drifting through. Rachel, we have to do something, Victoria was saying. Your brother's throwing his life away. James seems happy, Rachel replied cautiously. Happy? He's missing critical social connections because he's always playing nurse. Did you see how exhausted he looked at Christmas? That's unfair, Mom. Listen, Victoria pressed. Remember Sophia Hammond? Her father's firm is expanding, and she's still single. She'd be perfect for James. Are you seriously trying to set up my married brother? I've already spoken to Dr. Peterson. He's agreed to talk to James about the toll of caring for a disabled spouse. The stress, the limitations. He'll help James see this isn't sustainable. And Janice? Rachel asked, her voice tight. She trapped him. A disabled woman landing one of New York's most eligible bachelors? She saw dollar signs and played the sympathy card. My hands gripped the wheelchair so tightly my knuckles turned white. Victoria continued, undeterred. I've even heard she exaggerates her condition. Melissa saw her at the mall last week, moving just fine. I bit my lip, fury bubbling inside me. That day at the mall, I'd been in agonizing pain trying to retrieve a fallen shirt. My phone buzzed with a message from James. Dinner tonight with the Thompsons. Mom arranged it at La Jardin. My stomach dropped. I knew that restaurant, a grand staircase at the entrance, no ramp, no elevator. That evening as we pulled up, James jumped out, then froze. I swear I didn't know. Of course you didn't, Victoria said smoothly, stepping out of her car, her face a mask of faint surprise. Oh dear, I completely forgot about the stairs. How embarrassing. Victoria exclaimed with mock innocence as the Thompsons arrived, clearly uncomfortable as James struggled to navigate the situation. We can go somewhere else, Mr. Thompson offered, trying to ease the tension. Nonsense, Victoria said quickly. We'll never get another reservation at this hour. James, dear, Janice won't mind if you handle this one alone, right? She understands business comes first. Actually, I interjected, pulling out my phone with a calm smile. I made a backup reservation at the River Cafe. They have a beautiful, accessible waterfront space. I also heard Mr. Thompson enjoys their famous chocolate cake. Mrs. Thompson's face lit up. The River Cafe. That's my favorite. Much better choice. Victoria's smile turned brittle as the group turned to head back to their cars. James helped me into ours, then paused, his brow furrowed. You knew this would happen, didn't you? He asked. Let's just say I've learned to have contingency plans, I replied. I'm so sorry, he said, guilt heavy in his voice. I should have checked. It's not your fault, I said gently, but then my tone hardened. But James, there's something you need to know about your mom and Dr. Peterson. As I recounted the conversation I'd overheard, I watched his face shift from confusion to anger. Victoria's mask was finally slipping, and maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing. The next day, as I worked at my computer, James walked up behind me and began massaging my shoulders. How's the new database project coming along? Actually, I've been working on a different kind of database lately, I said, pulling up a spreadsheet filled with dates, screenshots, and messages. His brow furrowed. What's this? Your mom's been busy on social media, I said, clicking through the files. Remember Linda from the hospital board? Her daughter's in a wheelchair, too. Victoria blocked their entire family from country club membership last year. James's jaw tightened. Are you serious? Here's more, I said, scrolling down. This is what she wrote about the Hendersons after they adopted a child with Down syndrome. Some people just love collecting sympathy points. This is disgusting, James said, his voice low and furious. How did you get these? Her password wasn't exactly Fort Knox material, I replied dryly, and there's more. I pulled up financial records. Notice anything strange about these charity donations? James leaned in, his eyes scanning the numbers. These don't match our foundation's records. Exactly, I said. She's been skimming money from every fundraiser. The children's hospital renovation, disaster relief drives. Half the funds went straight into her personal account. His face darkened. And she's hosting the charity gala tonight, getting an award for her dedication to diversity and inclusion. The irony is staggering. At the gala, Victoria was in her element, gliding through the crowd in a designer dress, likely purchased with stolen donations. She greeted guests with practiced charm, oblivious to what was about to unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, the board chairman announced, stepping up to the podium, before we present our Humanitarian of the Year award, we have some additional materials to share. The giant screen behind him lit up, displaying Victoria's social media posts. Her face drained of color as her hateful words filled the room. Disabled people should know their place, preferably not in public. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then came the financial records, revealing the missing charity funds and the damning paper trail leading to her personal accounts. Security, stop this presentation, Victoria shouted, her voice shrill with panic. But it was too late. My daughter isn't broken, Linda said, rising from her wheelchair, and neither is your daughter-in-law. The Henderson's child is perfect just as he is, another voice called out. More people stood, sharing stories of Victoria's cruelty and discrimination. This is ridiculous, Victoria sputtered, her gaze darting around the room. James, tell them this isn't true. James stepped forward, his expression cold. What should I tell them, Mom? That you bribed our family doctor to lie about my marriage? That you stole from charities? That you've spent years discriminating against people like my wife? I was protecting our family's reputation, Victoria shouted. By tearing others down, I wheeled forward, meeting her panicked gaze. By stealing from sick children, you've brought shame on this family, Victoria, and now everyone knows it. Victoria stormed toward the exit, but 2 police officers intercepted her. As they placed her in handcuffs, James leaned down to me. Turns out, he said, his voice soft but resolute, I wasn't the only one investigating those missing funds. As Victoria was led away, my phone buzzed with an email from the Children's Charity Board. They wanted me to help develop an accessibility initiative for all their facilities. Looks like some good might come from this after all, James said, squeezing my hand. I watched the crowd disperse, whispering about Victoria's downfall. Sometimes karma needs a little push, from a girl with tech skills and a wheelchair. Another round of funding secured, I announced, wheeling into our penthouse office. James, deep in a stack of documents, looked up with a grin. That's my brilliant wife. How many millions this time? Enough to launch the adaptive tech program in every major hospital in the state, I replied, beaming. The TV hummed in the background until a familiar name grabbed our attention. Breaking news. Socialite Victoria Barrett pleads guilty to charity fraud and tax evasion. The former chairwoman faces uptoe. Turn it off, James sighed. I shook my head, my gaze steady. Your mother made her choices, every single one of them. My phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. Mom's trying to sell her Hamptons house. Nobody will buy it. They're all afraid of the scandal. James chuckled, breaking the tension. Speaking of houses, guess who just bought the building where Lady Jardin used to be? You didn't, I said, already knowing the answer. I did, and the first thing we're installing is the city's most beautiful wheelchair ramp. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same restaurant where Victoria had tried to humiliate me would soon house my company's new Accessibility Innovation Center. 3 years later, I was finalizing preparations for Tech Without Barriers, our annual accessibility conference, the largest of its kind in the country. Ma'am, my assistant said softly, leaning down to whisper, Victoria Barrett is in the lobby. She's asking to speak with you. I wheeled toward the glass doors and spotted her. No designer clothes, no air of superiority. She looked older, tired. Janice, please. Just 5 minutes, she said, her voice trembling. I hear you're living in a small condo in Queens now, I said, watching her flinch. Quite a change from the mansion. I've changed, she said, her eyes pleading. I've learned my lesson. What I did to you, to all those families, I'm sorry. Sorry you did it or sorry you got caught? I asked, my tone cool. Please, she begged, stepping closer, tears brimming in her eyes. I have nowhere else to turn. James won't even take my calls. Maybe you could talk to him. Like how you tried to get him to leave me? I asked, my words sharp but even. I was wrong, she whispered, her voice breaking. You're the best thing that ever happened to this family. I adjusted my chair, preparing to re-enter the conference hall. You know what the funny thing is, Victoria? I actually believe you mean that now, but some bridges stay burned. Through the glass doors, I saw her deflate, the weight of her actions heavy on her shoulders. Inside, the crowd erupted in applause as I took the stage. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're proud to announce a new scholarship program for disabled entrepreneurs. I began. A playful smile crossed my lips. And yes, it will be headquartered in a beautifully renovated building with the city's most impressive wheelchair ramp. Laughter rippled through the room, a stark contrast to the silence outside as Victoria lingered in the shadows. The woman who once tried to erase me from society now found herself erased from its circles. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising so high that those who sought to break you become irrelevant. As I looked out at the crowd, full of people Victoria once tried to exclude, I realized we hadn't just survived her prejudice. We thrived in spite of it. Now let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have accepted her tearful apology or kept walking like I did? Some scars, I believe, can't be healed by words alone. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hey there, I'm Jennifer. I'm 32, doing pretty well in the marketing world. But right now, I'm back in my hometown for the hardest reason imaginable. My big brother Andrew's funeral. I can't believe he's really gone. Andrew and I were inseparable growing up. He was my protector, my confidant, my partner in crime. I remember this one time when I was 10 and he was 14. We snuck out to the old abandoned house on the edge of town, armed with nothing but flashlights and our overactive imaginations. Stay close, Sar, he said, his voice steady even though I was terrified. I got you. That was Andrew, always looking out for me. But then Karen came along. I tried to like her, really. When Andrew first introduced us, I put on my best smile and said, Nice to meet you. But there was something about her, a coldness that never thawed. Oh, so you're the famous little sister, she'd said, her voice sugary sweet, but her eyes cutting. Andrew talks about you all the time. I could tell right then she saw me as competition. Every family gathering felt like a silent war. She'd make these snide remarks, suggesting I was too attached to Andrew or that it was time to grow up. Once at a barbecue, she'd said, loud enough for everyone to hear, It's cute how you still cling to Andrew, Jennifer, but don't you think it's time to cut the cord? I'd wanted to throw my drink at her, but Andrew had given me that look. The one that said, Let it go, sis. So I did, for him. Now, standing in the funeral home, I see Karen playing the part of the grieving widow flawlessly. She's got everyone fooled but not me. Our eyes meet across the room, and for a split second, her mask slips. There's a flicker of something in her gaze, anger, guilt. I can't quite tell. My parents are here too. Mom's a mess, mascara streaking down her cheeks as she clutches Dad's arm. Dad's trying to be strong, but I can see the pain in his face. They don't know about the tension between Karen and me. I kept it from them, not wanting to stir up any drama. Jennifer. I hear a familiar voice and turn to see Lisa, my best friend since kindergarten. She wraps me in a tight hug. I'm so sorry. Honorable, how are you holding up? I'm managing, I say, grateful for her support. Lisa's always been my rock, especially when things with Karen got rough. As we talk, I notice Tom, Karen's brother, hovering nearby. He's always had this awkward crush on me, which Karen hated. It was just one more thing that added tension between us. Hey Jennifer, Tom says, approaching with that awkwardness he's never quite grown out of. I'm really sorry about Andrew. He was a great guy. I nod, not trusting myself to speak. The whole situation feels surreal. My brother is gone, and I'm standing here, surrounded by a mix of genuine grief and a powder keg of unresolved issues. As the service begins, I can't help but think about all the things Andrew and I never got to say. The last time we spoke, he seemed off, like he wanted to tell me something but couldn't find the words. Now, I'll never know what it was. I glance over at Karen again, and this time she's staring right at me. There's a challenge in her eyes, a silent message I can feel in my gut. Whatever's between us, it's not over, and I know that whatever comes next is going to change everything. The funeral service is a blur of tears and whispers. I can't take my eyes off Karen. She keeps fidgeting, her gaze darting around like she's searching for an escape. When she finally stands to speak, her words sound rehearsed, hollow. Andrew was everything to me, she says, her voice breaking in a way that doesn't quite ring true. I don't know how I'll go on without him. I have to bite my tongue to keep from scoffing. After the service, we all head back to Andrew and Karen's house. I hang back, watching as Karen flits from person to person, playing the grieving widow with perfect, practiced grace. Moments pass where, when Karen thought no one was looking, her face seemed almost relieved. The weight of it all hit me, and I muttered to Lisa, I need some air. Slipping away from the crowd, I wandered into Andrew's home office, a place strictly off limits when he was alive, by Karen's rules, not his. What are you doing in here? Came Karen's voice from the doorway. I spun around, my heart racing as I met her narrow gaze. Just remembering Andrew, I lied, trying to keep my voice steady. She stepped closer, her perfume cloying in the confined space. Well, do it somewhere else, she said sharply. This room is private. She moved to usher me out, but as she did, something on the desk caught my eye. Financial documents, spreadsheets, bank statements, and the numbers. They didn't add up. Karen, I said slowly, suspicion curling in my gut. What's going on with Andrew's business accounts? Her face went white, then flushed with anger. That's none of your concern. Get out, she snapped. But I couldn't let it go. The more I looked, the clearer it became. You've been stealing from him, haven't you? I said, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. For years. You don't know what you're talking about, she hissed, her eyes blazing. I think I do, I countered. Does anyone else know? Is this why Andrew was acting so strange before he? But I didn't get to finish. In a flash, Karen grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the shelf and swung it at me. Pain erupted across my temple, and I staggered back. You nosy little, she snarled, all pretense gone. You've always been a thorn in my side. Well, not anymore. She shoved me out of the office, and I stumbled down the hall, my vision blurring. The next thing I knew, I was outside, the door slamming behind me. And don't come back. Karen's voice shrieked from behind the door. You're not welcome here anymore. I stood there stunned, blood trickling down the side of my face. Guests had started to whisper, their curious glances burning into me. Shame and shock churned in my stomach as I somehow made it to my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. I drove on autopilot, ending up at Lisa's place. As soon as I stepped inside, I collapsed into her arms, the events of the day pouring out in choked sobs. I told her everything, the documents, Karen's reaction, the vase. We need to call the police, Lisa said firmly, leading me to her couch. But I hesitated. I don't have proof, I said, despair washing over me. It's my word against hers, and she's the grieving widow. Who's going to believe me? Lisa's face was grim as she cleaned a cut on my head. So what are you going to do? I don't know, I replied, staring down at my still trembling hands. But I can't let her get away with this. I think it might be connected to Andrew's death. I need to find out the truth. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of sleepless nights and clandestine meetings. Lisa and I turned her apartment into our own little detective agency, fueled by coffee and a burning sense of justice. Look at this, Lisa said one night, handing me a stack of papers. I did some digging into Karen's background. She's got a whole other life we never knew about. I scanned the documents, my heart sinking. A previous marriage, I muttered, horrified. She told Andrew she'd never been married before. That's not all, Lisa continued, her voice grim. She has multiple fraud complaints against her under her maiden name. This woman's been running cons for years. My stomach churned, and Andrew had never known. We kept digging, piecing together Karen's twisted past. But we needed more, something concrete to connect her to the embezzlement from Andrew's business. That's when, of all people, Tom reached out to me. Jennifer, we need to talk, he said over the phone, his voice shaky. About Karen. There's stuff you need to know. We met at a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of town. Tom looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. I can't keep quiet anymore, he blurted out as soon as I sat down. Karen, she's done terrible things. To Andrew, to you, to so many people. Tell me everything, I said, leaning in. Tom spilled it all, how Karen had been siphoning money from Andrew's business for years, using it to pay off debts from her previous scams, and how she'd manipulated Tom into helping her cover her tracks. Andrew found out, Tom said, his voice breaking, about a month before he died. He confronted her, told her he was going to divorce her and expose everything. My blood ran cold. And then he suddenly died of a heart attack. Tom nodded, his gaze falling to the floor. I can't prove anything, but I've always wondered. He reached into his pocket and handed me a USB drive. This has everything. Bank records, emails, all the evidence of Karen's fraud. I should have come forward sooner. I'm sorry. Over the next few days, Lisa and I worked tirelessly, piecing together an airtight case against Karen. I reached out to some of her previous victims, gathering statements and more evidence of her long history of deceit. One night, as I sorted through some of Andrew's old files, I found something that stopped me cold. A letter, addressed to me, dated just days before his death. Jennifer, it read, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Karen isn't who we thought she was. I've uncovered some terrible things, and I'm afraid of what she might do. I need you to be careful. Tears streamed down my face as I read Andrew's final words to me. But I also need you to help me expose the truth. You're the only one I can trust. I love you, sis. Stay strong. In that moment, my resolve solidified. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Justice for Andrew, for all of Karen's victims, and for the truth. I looked at Lisa, my voice steady. We're going to take her down, whatever it takes. The next day, I walked into the family lawyer's office, feeling the weight of everything I'd uncovered pressing down on me. Mr. Johnson, who'd known our family for years, looked up as I entered, his brow furrowing in concern. Jennifer, what's all this about? He asked as I dropped a thick folder onto his desk. It's about Karen, I replied, holding his gaze, and what she did to Andrew. For the next hour, I laid out everything. Embezzlement, fraud, her hidden past. With every revelation, Mr. Johnson's face grew grimmer. My God, he whispered when I finished. We need to take this to the authorities immediately. As the investigation unfolded, more of Karen's victims came forward, each with similar stories of manipulation and deceit. The charges against her began to pile up. With her deceptions exposed, control of Andrew's estate and business reverted back to our family. I knew what I had to do. I'm taking over the company, I told my parents one night. Mom looked worried. Are you sure, honey? It's a big responsibility. I nodded, my resolve unwavering. I'm sure. It's what Andrew would have wanted. The transition wasn't easy. The business had suffered under Karen's mismanagement, but I threw myself into the work, determined to honor Andrew's memory. Slowly but surely, things began to turn around. On the 1 year anniversary of Andrew's death, I visited his grave. The autumn leaves crunched under my feet as I approached the headstone. "Hey, big bro," I murmured. "I got so much to tell you." I told him about the business, how we'd landed a big new client last week, about mom and dad and how they were doing better these days. And yes, I told him about Karen, how she wouldn't be hurting anyone else for a long time. A warm breeze rustled through the trees, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice on the wind. "Stay strong, sis. I got you." I smiled, touching the headstone one last time before turning to leave. Walking away, I felt lighter, freer. The past year had been a trial, but I'd come through it stronger. Karen was facing justice, the business was thriving, and most importantly, Andrew's memory was honored. Now I've got a question for you. If you discovered a loved one had been stealing from your family, would you turn them in or try to handle it privately? And what if their actions might have indirectly led to someone's death? This is a tough situation with no easy answers, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. My name's Olivia Chen. I'm a 35-year-old corporate lawyer, happily married to Mark, with a 5-year-old daughter, Emily. To outsiders, we look like the ideal suburban family. I've put in countless hours balancing my career and family, and I thought I was doing a pretty good job. Mark, my husband, is a successful sales executive. Charming, charismatic, the whole package. We met in college and married soon after graduation. Life seemed perfect at first. But lately, Mark's behavior has changed. He's become subtly controlling, asking where I've been, who I'm talking to. I brushed it off as work stress, but the nagging feeling lingered. Then there are my in-laws, Robert and Linda. They've never approved of me working full-time. Last Thanksgiving, Linda looked at me pointedly and said, "Olivia, don't you think Emily needs her mother at home more?" I nearly choked on my turkey. "Emily's doing great, Linda. She's top of her class and loves her after-school activities." I replied, keeping my voice steady. But she pressed on. "Well, I just think children need a strong maternal presence." Mark interjected, "Mom, we've talked about this. Olivia's career is important to her." I shot him a grateful look, but couldn't help noticing how he phrased it, to her instead of to us. My best friend and colleague Jessica has raised concerns about Mark. "Liv, are you sure everything's okay at home?" She asked, her brows furrowing. I usually laugh it off, but sometimes I wondered if she saw something I didn't. My brother, Michael, a detective, isn't a fan of Mark either. At Emily's birthday party last month, I caught him confronting Mark. "I got my eye on you, buddy. Olivia might not see it, but I know your type." Mark snapped, "Back off, Michael. What happens in my family is none of your business." I broke up the tension, but a chill settled in my stomach. Still, I thought we were making it work. Then, last Friday, Mark dropped a bombshell. "Olivia, my parents want to take Emily for the weekend while we're at the conference," he said. I froze. "Mark, you know I'm not comfortable leaving Emily with them for that long." He wagged it off. "Come on, they're her grandparents." I was exhausted after a grueling work week, and against my better judgment, I agreed. Little did I know that decision would change our lives forever. We returned from the conference early. A panel had been canceled, and I was eager to see Emily. But when we pulled up to the in-laws' house, an eerie quiet hung in the air. Usually Linda had the TV blaring. "Hello? Anyone home?" I called, stepping inside. Silence. My heart began to race as I searched room by room. Then a faint whimper came from the bathroom. I rushed over, my hands shaking as I turned the doorknob. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Emily sat huddled in the corner, her blue dress stained with blood, trembling. "Oh my God, Emily!" I cried, rushing to her. "Baby, what happened?" She just stared at me, wide-eyed and terrified. When I tried to touch her, she flinched, recoiling from me. "Emily, sweetie, it's Mommy. You're safe now." "Emily," I whispered, trying to soothe her trembling frame. "Can you tell me what happened?" She mumbled something, her voice barely audible. "What was that, honey?" "Grandpa's game," she whispered, then burst into tears. Just then, I heard footsteps. It was Mark, his reaction throwing me off. "Oh, it's just a nosebleed," he said, too casually, grabbing a washcloth and wiping Emily's face like it was no big deal. "Mark, look at her. We need to take her to the hospital." "Don't be dramatic, Olivia. Kids get nosebleeds all the time." I was about to argue when Robert and Linda rushed in, feigning surprise. Oh dear, what happened? Linda gasped, her tone barely convincing. That's what I'd like to know, I said, feeling my lawyer instincts kick in. Where were you two? Robert stammered. We just stepped out for some groceries. Both of you? And you left a 5-year-old alone. Mark cut in. Olivia, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Let's not jump to conclusions. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked down at Emily and noticed faint bruises on her arms that hadn't been there before. We're taking her to the hospital now, I said firmly. Mark grabbed my arm. No, we're not. You're overreacting, as usual. We're going home. Overreacting? Our daughter was covered in blood. It's handled, Olivia. Drop it. The drive home was tense. Emily sat silently in the back seat while Mark kept insisting I calm down. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. When we got home, I tucked Emily into bed. She clung to me like her life depended on it. Mommy's here, baby. You're safe now, I whispered, fighting back tears. Once she was asleep, I slipped out of her room and texted Jessica and Michael. Whatever was going on, I needed help. I was going to get to the bottom of it. No one messes with my child and gets away with it. The weeks following that nosebleed incident were a nightmare. Emily wasn't sleeping, waking up from horrific nightmares, crying, no, Grandpa, no. Every time, it shattered me. I started noticing things I'd missed before. How she flinched when Mark raised his voice. How she'd go silent at any mention of her grandparents. During lunch one day, I confided in Jessica. Jess, I think something happened to Emily at my in-laws. Mark's acting strange, and Emily's terrified. Jessica grimaced. Liv, I've always had a bad feeling about Mark. Remember when he accidentally broke your phone because you were out late? I nodded, my stomach churning. What do I do? Gather evidence. I have a friend who can set you up with some hidden cameras. That night, after Mark fell asleep, I installed tiny cameras around the house and slipped a GPS tracker into his car. It felt wrong, but I had to protect Emily. Days later, while reviewing our finances, I discovered an unfamiliar bank account. Mark, what's this account? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He snatched the laptop. It's nothing, just a work account. Work stuff that needs $50,000 in cash withdrawals? His eyes flashed with anger. Stay out of it, Olivia. I mean it. That's when I knew I had to dig deeper. I called Michael, filled him in, and he promised to look into Mark's background. A week later, Michael arrived at my office with a grim look. Olivia, you're not going to like this. Mark has a history of domestic violence complaints. They were mysteriously dropped. I felt like I'd been punched. There's more, isn't there? Michael nodded. Your father-in-law, he's got shady connections. I think they're involved in something illegal. That night, I waited until Mark was in the shower and checked his emails. What I found made my blood run cold. He and his parents had been discussing handling me if I got too nosy. Worse, there were unsettling mentions of Emily. The next morning, I called Linda, feigning innocence. Linda, Emily's been having nightmares about some game with Grandpa. Any idea what that's about? There was a long pause before she answered, oh, you know how kids are. Their imaginations can run wild. Really? Because this seems like more than just imagination. Olivia, she replied, her voice cold. Don't make a fuss over nothing. It's not good for the family. I hung up, my hands shaking. They were all in on whatever was happening. It was hurting my baby girl. Over the next few days, I devised a plan. I needed to get Emily out, gather enough evidence, and bring these monsters down. But I had to be smart. One wrong move, and I could lose everything. That night, as I tucked Emily in, I whispered, don't worry, baby. Mommy's going to fix this. I promise. I kissed her forehead, bracing myself for what was to come. The next morning, I woke up early, my heart pounding. I had to play it cool. One slip, and everything could crumble. Morning on, I greeted Mark with a forced smile. I was thinking, maybe Emily could have a sleepover at Jessica's tonight. Give us some alone time. Mark looked surprised but nodded. Sure, why not? I dropped Emily off at Jessica's, hugging her tightly. Be good, sweetie. Mommy loves you. Back at home, I took a deep breath and confronted Mark. We need to talk. What about? His tone immediately turned defensive. I laid out the evidence, his secret bank account, the emails, and Emily's bruises. His face shifted from shock to fury. "You've been spying on me," he snarled. "I've been protecting our daughter," I shot back. "What the hell have you and your parents been doing to her?" He lunged at me, grabbing my arm. "You know, see, you have no idea what you're messing with." I struggled, managing to press the panic button on my phone. "I know enough, Mark. It's over." His eyes widened as he realized what I'd done. Just then, the door burst open. Michael stormed in with a team of officers. NYPD. Hands where we can see them. Mark tried to run, but the officers quickly tackled him to the floor. As they cuffed him, he spat, "You'll regret this, Olivia. My family will destroy you." I watched coldly as they led him away. "No, Mark," I said, steady as steel. "You're the one who's going to regret ever laying a hand on our daughter." A year later, life looks very different. We moved to a new city for a fresh start. Emily's in therapy and thriving. Her nightmares have lessened, and she's smiling again. I made partner at a new law firm specializing in family law and domestic abuse cases. Now, I use my experience to help others escape situations like mine. Today, as I was preparing for a big case, my phone rang. Mark's new lawyer, probably fishing for an appeal. I deleted the voicemail without listening. That chapter of our lives is closed. Later, as Emily and I planned our weekend movie night with ice cream sundaes, I realized something. We're not just surviving, we're thriving. And those monsters, they're nothing but a fading nightmare. If you discovered a dark secret about your spouse or in-laws that put your child at risk, would you confront them directly or gather evidence first? What would you do differently from Olivia? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone in a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. We share stories that shed light on important issues, and your support helps us reach more people who might need to hear them. Remember, in situations of abuse or danger, prioritize safety and seek professional help. No one should face these challenges alone. Hey there, I'm Amelia, 28, a marketing exec with a story that'll make your head spin. At work, I'm on fire, leading campaigns that have clients singing my praises. But behind the power suits and killer presentations, there's a whole lot of baggage I've been dragging around. It all started when I was 15. My mom passed away suddenly, leaving just Dad and me to figure out life without her. Those were some dark days, but Dad stepped up big time. He came to all my soccer games, helped me with homework, even tried to braid my hair. Keyword, tried. We became this unstoppable duo, just Dad and me. Fast forward to last week. I'm out grabbing coffee with my bestie Megan when she brings up my love life, or lack thereof. "Amelia, when are you going to get back out there? It's been, 2 years since Tom." I nearly choke on my latte. "Megs, you know why. That relationship was a nightmare." I know, she sighs, "but not every guy's like him." I stir my coffee, thinking back. Tom had been charming at first, showing up at work with flowers, surprising me with sweet gestures. But then he got possessive. Megan's face darkens. Yeah, the constant texts, getting mad if you hung out with friends, telling you your work clothes were too revealing. It was like he was trying to control every part of you. I smile gratefully at Megan. "Thanks to you and your midnight ice cream runs, I made it out." Work has been good though, especially since Jason joined the team. He's a total sweetheart, always has my back during presentations. I've caught him looking at me a few times, but after Tom, I'm just not ready. Then my phone buzzes. It's Dad. "Hey, sweetie, got a minute?" "For you?" "Always. What's up?" He pauses, and I can practically hear the grin in his voice. "I've got some news. I'm engaged." I nearly dropped my phone. "Dad, that's amazing. Tell me everything." He laughs, sounding younger than he has in years. "Her name's Caroline. She's 40, works in publishing. We met at that charity golf tournament last month. You know, the one you couldn't make. We talk for a while, and I find myself genuinely happy. Dad deserves this. So when's the big day?" I ask. "We're thinking fall. Actually, I was hoping you'd help with some of the planning." "Are you kidding? I'd love to." Over the next few weeks, though, things start to feel off. Dad's being vague about certain details, rushing off my questions about the guest list or the best man. "Don't worry, sweetie. Caroline's handling most of it." I try to brush it off, but I get that nagging feeling. The same one I had when things started going south with Tom. "But this is Dad, right? my rock through everything. He wouldn't keep secrets from me, would he? Then one afternoon, I'm out for lunch with Jason, picking at my salad while he talks about some new campaign strategy. I'm only half listening, my mind spinning with questions about Dad's sudden secrecy. Earth to Amelia, Jason waves a hand in front of my face. You okay? You seem a million miles away. I'm about to answer when I catch a snippet of conversation from the table behind us. Can you believe David's having his daughter's ex as his best man? Talk about awkward. My fork clatters to my plate. Jason looks at me, concerned. Amelia, what's wrong? I hold up a hand, my heart pounding as I strain to hear more. I heard it was pretty messy between them. Tom, right? Guess he and David are best buds now. The room starts to spin. Jason's saying something, but I can't hear him over the roaring in my ears. Tom, best man, Dad. I'm on my feet before I know it, mumbling some excuse to Jason. Moments later, I'm in my car, speeding toward Dad's place. I burst through the front door without knocking. Dad steps out of his study, surprised. Amelia, what's wrong? Is it true? My voice shakes. Is Tom your best man? The color drains from his face. How did you? So it is true. I feel sick. How could you? Dad's expression hardens. Now, Amelia, let's not blow this out of proportion. That was years ago, he says, dismissively. People change. Tom and I have become good friends through our new business venture. He's not the same person he was. I can't believe what I'm hearing. So what, your new friendship trumps what he did to me? Oh, come on, Dad scoffs. That was just youthful drama. You're both adults now. Can't you put it behind you? Without another word, I turn and walk out, ignoring him calling after me. I drive aimlessly for hours, finally ending up at Megan's. She opens the door, takes one look at me, and pulls me into a hug. Oh, honey, what happened? Through tears, I spill everything. Megan listens, her face growing darker with each word. That manipulative bastard, she mutters when I finish. Both of them. My phone buzzes. It's Jason, checking if I'm okay. I text him to come over, and when he arrives, I rehash the entire story. Jason's usually cheerful face is serious. Amelia, I hate to say it, but your dad's behavior is toxic as hell. Megan nods. He's gaslighting you, sweetie, making you doubt your own experiences. But he's my dad, I protest weakly. He's always been there for me. Now he's choosing your abuser over you, Jason says gently. That's not okay. They're right, and I know it. The dad I thought I knew would never do this. This person, he's someone else entirely. I can't go to that wedding, I say finally. I won't. Megan squeezes my hand. We've got your back, no matter what. Jason nods. Your mental health comes first. If your dad can't see that, it's his loss. Sitting there, surrounded by my true support system, I feel a weight lift. This isn't okay. None of it is. But I'm not alone, and I'm done letting toxic people, even family, dictate my life. The next few weeks are a nightmare. Dad goes nuclear blasting me on social media and to anyone who will listen. To him, I'm a selfish, ungrateful daughter who can't be happy for her poor, widowed father finally finding love. My phone lights up with messages from relatives I haven't heard from in years. How could you do this to your father after everything he's done for you? You're tearing the family apart. I want to scream. They don't know. They don't understand. Work's not much better. I overhear whispers in the break room and see people go silent when I walk by. It's high school all over again, and I'm the outcast. One day, I'm grabbing coffee when I hear Susan from accounting murmur. She's just jealous because her ex upgraded to her dad. The mug slips from my hand, shattering on the floor. Everyone turns to stare. I freeze, humiliated, until suddenly Jason's there. All right, show's over, he says loudly. Don't you all have work to do? He guides me back to my office, closing the door behind us. You okay? He asks softly. I shake my head, fighting back tears. I don't know how much more of this I can take. Jason's quiet for a moment. You know, my sister went through something similar. Her ex, he was a real piece of work. When she finally left him, half the family turned on her. What did she do? Therapy, he says simply. Helped her see she wasn't crazy, that she deserved better. 2 days later, I'm sitting across from Dr. Evans, pouring out my heart. She listens in a way no one has in a long time. It's hard. Some days I want to cave, to apologize just to make the drama stop. But then I remember Tom. how it felt to lose myself. Never again. Jason has been amazing through all this. He shuts down gossip at work, brings me coffee on rough mornings. There's something there, but I'm not ready. Not yet. As Dad's wedding day approaches, the pressure intensifies. Caroline even shows up at my apartment, pleading with me. It would mean so much to your father, she says. Can't you put aside your differences for one day? I take a deep breath. Caroline, I'm sorry, but no. My mental health isn't something I'm willing to compromise on. Not anymore. That night, I'm scrolling through my phone when an ad pops up. Discover yourself in Thailand. Suddenly, I know what I need to do. The next morning, I march into my boss's office. I'd like to take some personal leave. I say, 2 weeks, starting on the 15th. My boss looks at me over her glasses. The 15th, isn't that your father's wedding day? Yes, I answer steadily. I think it's time I did something for myself. She nods, understanding in her eyes. Approved. You've more than earned it. I book my tickets that afternoon, and as I click confirm, a weight lifts off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I feel excited. That evening, I meet Megan and Jason for drinks, and their eyes go wide when I tell them my plans. Thailand. Megan squeals. Girl, that's amazing. Jason grins. I'm proud of you, Amelia. This is a big step. I raise my glass to new beginnings and to friends who stand by you no matter what. Stepping off the plane in Thailand, I feel like a new person. 2 weeks in this beautiful place have done wonders for my soul. The chaos of the past few months seems like a distant memory. As I wait for my luggage, my phone buzzes. Megan. Total disaster. Dad got drunk and spilled all your dad's dirty laundry. Turns out Mr. Perfect had a lot to hide. Caroline bolted before they even said, I do. Oh, and guess what? The business venture went belly up. Tom screwed it up big time. I hang up feeling nothing, no anger, no satisfaction, just closure. Months fly by and work is booming. I nail a huge presentation and am called into the boss's office. Amelia, we're promoting you to creative director. You've earned it. One day, after a talk I give to interns on workplace dynamics, a young woman approaches me, eyes shining. Your story inspired me to leave my toxic boyfriend. Thank you. Soon, I start mentoring young professionals, sharing my journey. It's healing in ways I never expected. Then, out of the blue, Dad shows up at my apartment. He looks older, defeated. Amelia, honey, can we talk? He asks. I let him in but keep my distance. I'm sorry, he starts. I made mistakes, but Tom, he manipulated me, and Caroline. Stop. Just stop, I say, holding up a hand. You're still not taking responsibility. He deflates. I just want my little girl back. I take a deep breath. Dad, I'm not that little girl anymore. I'm a woman who's learned to value herself. I don't need your approval or your presence in my life. I wish you the best, but this is goodbye. Before I know it, I'm turning 30. Megan and Jason throw me a surprise party, and as I look around at all the smiling faces, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. While cutting the cake, Megan pulls me aside. Hey, did you hear? Tom got arrested for fraud, and your dad? He's facing an audit for that failed business. I pause, fork halfway to my mouth. Wow. You okay? Megan asks, concerned. I think for a moment. Yeah, I am. I don't feel happy about it, but what goes around comes around, huh? 2 years ago, I was lost, scared, letting others define my worth. But today, I'm standing here, surrounded by real love and support. I'm proud of who I've become and the boundaries I've set. To all of you who've been part of this journey, I say, raising a toast, thank you. And to anyone out there struggling, it gets better. You're stronger than you know. So, the story's over, but I've got a question. Was I right to cut my dad out of my life completely, or should I have given him another chance? It's not an easy call, is it? On one hand, family is family, but on the other, toxic behavior is toxic behavior, no matter who it comes from. What would you have done in my shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
Hey there, I'm Luna. I'm a 32-year-old marketing executive, and let me tell you, my story is about to take a wild turn. For the past 5 years, I thought I had it all with my husband, Derek. We were living what looked like the American dream, married to a handsome 35-year-old hotshot lawyer with a smile that could melt stone. We had a beautiful house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the driveway, and plans to start a family. Luna, honey, have you thought about baby names yet? Derek would ask with that charming smile of his. I laugh it off, saying, "Easy there, Tiger. Let's make the baby first." If only I'd known the storm brewing under the surface. Derek's family, oh, they were straight out of a Hallmark movie. His mom, Barbara, was always trying to fatten me up with her famous casseroles. "Luna, dear, you're too skinny. How will you carry my grandbabies?" she'd say, while his dad, Richard, chuckled from behind his newspaper. Even Derek's sister, Melissa, would roll her eyes, but with a smile that always felt more like acceptance than judgment. But things started changing, almost too subtly to notice at first. Derek was coming home later and later, always with an excuse. "Sorry, Luna, big case. Johnson's breathing down our necks about this merger." Then there were the phone calls. He'd step out of the room, voice lowered. I'm not proud, but I started listening at the doors. "Yeah, it's done." "No, she doesn't suspect a thing." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Confused, I turned to my best friend, Zoe, over margaritas. "Z, am I crazy? Or is something up with Derek?" Zoe, ever the blunt one, looked at me squarely and said, "Luna, honey, something's fishy. You might want to consider hiring a PI." At first, I resisted, but then desperation won. The PI's report arrived a week later, detailing multiple visits to a urologist's office. My heart raced with dread, but it wasn't until I stumbled upon a crumpled receipt in Derek's office drawer that the full truth came crashing down. My hands shook as I unfolded it, the words blurring through my tears: vasectomy consultation and procedure. I whispered in disbelief, "Derek?" And as the realization hit, a plan began to form. The next morning, I dropped the bomb. "Derek, honey," I said, steadying my voice, "I'm pregnant." The look on his face was priceless, a stretched smile hiding barely contained panic. "That's wonderful, Luna," he stammered, pulling me into a hug that felt more like a cage than an embrace. Later that week, I overheard him on a call with his old college buddy Tom. Pressing myself against the wall, I strained to hear. "A vasectomy? Are you insane?" Tom hissed. Derek's voice was desperate. "I had to. Luna was getting baby crazy. You know I never wanted kids." The betrayal was like a knife twisting in my heart, but I held it together. I needed more information, and I knew exactly where to start. Enter Sarah, Derek's beautiful coworker, who I'd always been a little wary of. I invited her for coffee, flashing her a friendly smile. "Derek talks about you all the time," she gushed. I leaned in, giving her a conspiratorial grin. "Really? You must have some good stories about him." Her smile wavered. "Well, I don't know if I should say." "Oh, come on, we're friends now, right?" I coaxed, and soon the floodgates opened. She spilled it all. Derek's flirtations, those business trips that didn't add up, the hushed phone calls. She looked at me, genuinely regretful. "I'm so sorry, Luna. I thought you knew." But the real kicker? That came when I decided to do some digging of my own. Late one night, while Derek was fast asleep, I cracked into his laptop. What I found made my blood run cold. Buried in his financial records was a trail of embezzled money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all funneled into gambling accounts. My husband, the upstanding lawyer, was nothing but a common thief. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" Derek would ask the next morning, his hand hovering awkwardly over my still flat stomach. "Just peachy," I'd reply with a forced smile. Two could play this game, but as I lay awake that night, my mind raced. I was in way over my head. How far was I willing to go to expose the truth, and when all was said and done, would there be anything left of my life to salvage? The tension in our house thickened, like a pressure cooker ready to blow. Derek's paranoia hit a fever pitch. One night, he stormed into the bedroom, his eyes wild. "Who were you talking to on the phone, Luna?" he demanded, his voice dripping with suspicion. I sighed, feeling the weight of exhaustion. It was Zoe, Derek, same as always. "Don't lie to me," he shouted, his face twisted with anger. "I know you're cheating. It's the only explanation." That was it, the last straw. I snapped, unleashing everything I'd kept bottled up. "You want to talk about lying, Derek? Fine, let's talk about your little secret." His face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I pulled the crumpled vasectomy receipt from my pocket, waving it in his face. "Care to explain this?" What followed was an explosive argument, years of resentment and secrets tearing through us like shrapnel. "Fine," he yelled, his face flushed. "I got a vasectomy, happy now." Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why would you do this? Derek's expression hardened, his voice turning cold. Because you trapped me, Luna. This whole marriage was a mistake. I never wanted kids, never wanted this life. But you pushed and pushed. His words hit like physical blows, each one leaving a fresh wound. What are you saying? He laughed bitterly. I'm saying I've been living a double life, Luna. The perfect husband at home. But outside, I was free. No kids, no responsibility. Just me, living the life I always wanted. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. It was his family, probably alerted by our shouting. Barbara rushed in, her face stricken with worry. What's going on here? She demanded. Derek, ever the snake, turned to his family, his eyes brimming with fake tears. Luna's been lying to all of us, he said, his voice breaking. She's not really pregnant. She's been manipulating me, manipulating all of us. I stood there, paralyzed as he spun a web of lies. According to him, I pressured him into marriage, faked the pregnancy, and schemed to keep him trapped. His family's sympathy morphed into cold stares. Is this true, Luna? Richard asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but before I could say a word, Melissa stepped forward. There's more, she murmured, her gaze flickering between us. Derek, I knew about the vasectomy. I'm sorry. I should have told you. The room erupted. Accusations flew, tears spilled, and through it all, I remained silent, watching as the last shreds of my life unraveled. In a daze, I packed my bags, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me like a lead blanket. Outside, Zoe waited in her car, her face soft with sympathy. You okay, hun? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat. I shook my head, feeling tears finally spill over. I don't know. I don't know who I am anymore, Z, I whispered, staring out the car window as we drove away from the house I once called home. Everything I thought I knew, my marriage, my future, had turned to ashes. Zoe squeezed my hand gently. You're the strongest person I know, Luna. You'll get through this. I nodded, wiping away a tear. She was right. This was just the beginning, and Derek had no idea what was coming. Months after the fallout, I threw myself into my work, making the office my sanctuary, a place where I could rebuild myself, piece by piece. Luna, these campaign numbers are incredible, my boss told me one day. How would you feel about heading up your own department? I felt a surge of pride, a spark of the woman I used to be reigniting. I'd say it's about time, I replied with a smile. But that was just the start. With a newfound confidence, I took a leap and launched my own marketing firm. The day I signed the lease on my new office space, I felt like I could conquer the world. Late one evening, as I was working alone, a memory crept into my mind. Derek's embezzlement. My finger hovered over the send button of an anonymous email to his law firm. For a moment, I hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, I clicked. The fallout was swift. Within weeks, Derek was fired and disbarred, his once golden reputation shattered. Then the hits kept coming. Sarah, his former coworker, came forward with proof of his affairs, multiple affairs. The news spread like wildfire through our old social circles, and Derek's entire world began to crumble. One day, as I was leaving my office, I ran into Barbara and Richard. They looked older, worn down by everything that had happened. Luna, Barbara said softly, her voice trembling. We owe you an apology. We had no idea about Derek's activities. Richard nodded solemnly. We were wrong to doubt you. Is there any way we can make amends? I looked at them, these people who had once felt like family. For a moment, I was tempted to let them back into my life. But then I remembered the pain, the betrayal. I took a deep breath. I appreciate you saying that, I replied, my voice steady. But I think it's best if we go our separate ways. I wish you well. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was free from the lies, the manipulation, the toxic bonds that had held me back for so long. Months turned into years, and my business flourished. I found joy in the simplest things. A quiet evening with Zoe, the thrill of a successful campaign, the freedom to make my own choices. One night, as I sat on my balcony overlooking the city lights, I reflected on everything that had happened, the pain, the betrayal, and the long journey back to myself. Through it all, I learned an invaluable lesson. Trust your instincts and never ever compromise your values for anyone. Luma's journey through betrayal and rebirth has come to an end, but now I want to hear from you. If you were in Luna's shoes, would you have exposed Derek's embezzlement or kept that information to yourself? What do you think is the right thing to do when you discover someone's illegal activities, especially if that person has hurt you deeply? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help others facing similar dilemmas. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more compelling stories about overcoming life's toughest challenges. The evening air felt thick as I stepped into the house, weary from a grueling day at work. Any hope for a peaceful night vanished, replaced by an oppressive silence. As I passed the small office, I froze, my heart pounding. There, at my desk, was Ethan. His face was tense, and scattered across the table were my personal documents, bank statements, savings records, even the journal where I'd lovingly mapped out our baby's future. "What are you doing?" I demanded, stepping inside. My voice shook with anger and disbelief. Ethan looked up, his expression chillingly unapologetic. "Just making sure everything's in order," he replied with infuriating calm. "With the baby on the way, we need to be prepared." My hands clenched at my sides. "You went through my things without asking." My voice rose, edged with rage. "You had no right." His calm facade cracked, and he stood up, his eyes narrowing. "Jessica, our finances are shared," he said coldly. "I have a right to know what's going on, especially when you're acting like money grows on trees." Confusion quickly turned to dread. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice rising. "I've been saving every penny for our baby's future. What could possibly justify this invasion of privacy?" Ethan took a step closer, his gaze icy. "I'm $100,000 in debt, Jessica. Gambling debt. I need that $50,000 you've been hiding away. We have to fix this before it destroys us." The room spun around me as his words sank in. The savings I carefully set aside to secure our baby's future were now the target of his reckless choices. "You're not using that money," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "That's for our child." Ethan's face twisted with anger. "You're being selfish," he shouted, his voice echoing through the room. "This is about survival." Before I could react, his hand shot out, striking me hard across the face. The force of the blow sent me stumbling back, my cheek stinging with sharp, fiery pain. Shock and fear gripped me as he grabbed my shoulders, shoving me against the wall. Pain shot down my spine, and my heart raced. "You think you can defy me?" he hissed, his grip tightening. "I've sacrificed for this family, and you act like some spoiled little girl." Tears blurred my vision, but I held my ground, my voice barely a whisper. "You can't do this to me," I said, desperation breaking through. Mustering every ounce of strength, I pushed him away and staggered out of the room. I bolted outside, the cool evening air hitting my tear-streaked face as I stumbled into my car. Locking the doors, I sat there, gasping for breath. My body shook, but the instinct to protect my baby burned fiercer than my fear. I had to get away. The next morning, I met my best friend Olivia at our usual coffee shop, the bruise on my cheek glaringly fresh. Her eyes widened with horror when she saw me, and she pulled me into a gentle hug. "Jessica, what happened?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Taking a shaky breath, I told her everything: Ethan's secret gambling debt, his plan to steal my $50,000 savings, and how he had crossed a line I could never forgive. When I finished speaking, Olivia's face grew hard with anger. "You have to leave," she said, her voice steady and firm. "You and your baby deserve to be safe. You can't stay with him." Her words pierced through my fog of fear, and I nodded, tears welling up. "I know," I whispered, "but I don't know where to go." Reaching across the table, Olivia squeezed my hand. "We'll figure it out," she promised. "But first, you need legal protection. We have to get you a lawyer." A few days later, Olivia drove me to meet Alex, a respected family attorney. His office was warm and inviting, sunlight streaming through large windows. I needed that feeling of safety more than ever. Alex greeted me with a kind smile, but as I shared my story, his expression turned serious. I described the emotional abuse, Ethan's gambling debt, and the physical violence. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to stay strong for my baby. "You're incredibly brave," Alex said gently, "but you need to be prepared. If you fight for your rights, Ethan might retaliate. We'll need solid evidence of everything." Olivia leaned forward. Jessica's been saving texts, photos, and journal entries for months. We can get whatever you need. Alex nodded, his expression resolute. Good. We'll start by securing a protective order and making sure Ethan can't touch that $50,000. We'll also need proof of his gambling debts and financial recklessness. Hope sparked in my chest. With Olivia and Alex by my side, I felt a flicker of strength. The days blurred into nights as Olivia and I worked late, gathering every piece of evidence we could find. We documented text messages where Ethan belittled and manipulated me, photographed the bruise on my cheek, and found records of his gambling debts. Each piece felt like a weapon in my fight to protect my baby. One evening, I sat at my parents' house, my hands trembling as I finally shared everything with them. They'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't known the full extent. My father's jaw clenched in anger, but he took my hand gently. "You're stronger than you think, Jessica," he said, his voice steady. "We're here for you." Their support filled me with renewed courage. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for my baby's future. The day of the court hearing arrived, and the courthouse felt cold and intimidating. I walked in with Olivia and Alex at my side. Ethan was already there, sitting with his lawyer, his expression hard. His mother sat beside him, her glare full of disdain. The judge called us forward, and Alex presented our case with calm precision, detailing Ethan's emotional abuse, his hidden gambling debt of $100,000, and the physical violence I had endured. He emphasized that my $50,000 was for our baby's future, not to cover Ethan's reckless decisions. When it was my turn, I took the stand. My hands trembled, but I kept my voice strong. "I married Ethan because I loved him," I began, "but his choices put us all in danger. He hid his gambling addiction, and when I tried to protect my baby, he hurt me. I can't let my child grow up in a home filled with fear." Ethan's lawyer tried to paint me as overly emotional, claiming Ethan's actions were due to stress. But the judge listened closely, her eyes narrowing at their arguments. She asked pointed questions about Ethan's debts and behavior, making it clear she wasn't buying his excuses. During a recess, Alex leaned over to me. "You're doing great, Jessica," he whispered. "Stay strong. The judge is paying attention to the facts." From across the room, Ethan glared at me, but I held my head high. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was fighting for my baby and our future. When the judge finally delivered her verdict, she looked directly at Ethan. "Your actions are inexcusable. You are hereby sentenced to 5 years in prison for assault and financial misconduct, and you must pay a $5,000 fine to Jessica for damages." Relief washed over me as the nightmare ended and justice prevailed. The weeks that followed were filled with emotions and adjustments. With Ethan imprisoned and legally barred from contacting me, a sense of safety gradually returned to my life. My parents opened their home to me, offering unwavering support as I prepared for my baby's arrival. Olivia stayed by my side, her presence a constant source of strength. Together, we transformed one of the spare rooms in my parents' house into a beautiful nursery. We painted the walls a soothing pastel blue, decorating with cheerful animal prints. Each small step, hanging curtains, arranging baby clothes, setting up the crib, felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost. Yet despite this newfound peace, there were still nights when fear crept in. Nightmares sometimes pulled me back to memories of Ethan's rage, and I would wake up gasping, clutching my belly as if to shield my unborn child from the darkness of the past. As the autumn leaves drifted gently outside, I sat on the back porch with my father, a cool breeze carrying the scent of change. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. My father, a man of few words, turned to me, his voice filled with quiet pride. "You've been through hell, Jessica, but you're stronger because of it. Your mother and I are so proud of you." Tears filled my eyes, tears of gratitude. "Thank you, Dad," I whispered. "I don't think I could have made it through without you and Mom." He placed a gentle hand on mine. "We're here for you always." A few weeks later, Olivia surprised me with a small, intimate baby shower. Only my closest friends and family were there, filling the living room with laughter, love, and pastel-colored decorations. We played silly games, shared memories, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself feel truly happy. That evening, after everyone had left, Olivia and I sat on a couch surrounded by gifts, baby clothes folded neatly in a pile. "You've come so far, Jess," Olivia said, her voice soft. "I'm so proud of you.
Looking at the gifts and the colorful wrapping paper, I felt a wave of gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you for being there, for believing in me. Olivia smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. Always. As my due date approached, I spent more time in the nursery, imagining the future I'd share with my daughter. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the curtains, I sat in the rocking chair, my hand resting on my belly. Little one, I whispered, you're going to grow up in a home filled with love. You'll never have to know fear. I promise. The day finally came when I went into labor. It was a whirlwind of pain, nerves, and excitement, but I was surrounded by the people I loved most. My parents held my hands, and Olivia never left my side. Hours later, I held my daughter, Charlotte, in my arms for the first time. Her tiny eyes blinked up at me, and the world seemed to stand still. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "You're safe, my love." We're both safe now. The weeks after Charlotte's birth were filled with sleepless nights and tender moments. My parents helped with feedings and late-night diaper changes, and Olivia visited often, bringing meals and laughter. The love that surrounded Charlotte and me was overwhelming, a reminder that we'd both found a new beginning. One afternoon, as I rocked Charlotte in the nursery, the sunlight cast a warm glow on the walls. I thought about how far we had come. The pain of the past had left scars, but they were reminders of the strength I'd discovered within myself. I had fought for freedom, for safety, and for the chance to give my daughter a life filled with love and joy. Healing was not a straight line, but every day was a step forward. And with Charlotte in my arms, I knew our future was brighter than I'd ever imagined. Thank you for following our journey. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to show your support. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below.